Chapter 479. Old Tortoise used the soul-searching technique to search the undead emperor's memory. From the undead emperor's memory, he learned a lot about the external regions of the Hell Dao. He and Jiyu Fei were now in a region ruled by the Bone Emperor, the undead emperor. The Bone Emperor of the Immortal Emperor was one of the three invincible emperors in the outer regions of the Hell Dao. The other two emperors who were neighbors to the Bone Emperor of the Immortal Emperor were powerful existences called the Emperor of the Netherworld who lived in the west of the Bone Emperor of the Immortal Emperor's territory. The other was an invincible Corpse Emperor in the east of the Bone Emperor's territory. The Bone Emperor, the Netherworld Emperor, and the Corpse Emperor were the most powerful existences in the Hell Dao's peripheral regions. Each of the three emperors had a vast territory and represented three forces. The Bone Emperor's territory was almost entirely filled with undead creatures. The Bone Emperor was the supreme undead creature. In his territory, all undead creatures had to listen to his orders. He was a supreme existence. In the territories of the other two emperors, it was a different scene. Although there were undead creatures in their territories, there were very few of them. The forces in the external regions of this world were divided very carefully and clearly. The territory ruled by the Bone Emperor was a paradise for undead creatures. Few evil spirits and malicious spirits would appear in the Bone Emperor's territory. The territory of the Netherworld Emperor was the world of countless evil spirits and malicious spirits. This was because the Netherworld Emperor himself was a 10,000-year-old ghost. He was the emperor of countless evil spirits and malicious spirits. Just like Ghost Emperor Fengdu in the human world, he commanded countless powerful evil spirits and malicious spirits. The Corpse King's territory didn't have any undead creatures or evil spirits. It was filled with endless corpse chi and countless corpses. It was a world of corpses, zombies, and evil corpses. It could be said that the Corpse King's territory was the place where death chi gathered in the outside world. This evil land was the most suitable place to refine corpses. The external regions of the Hell Dao were not peaceful. Battles broke out between the three emperors from time to time. Each time, there were countless casualties, forming a tripartite situation. After Old Tortoise and Jiyu Fei understood the situation in the external regions of the Hell Dao, they became more cautious. They did not want to attract the attention of the three emperors. However, they possessed powerful vitality and were living beings with flesh and blood. Even if they didn't want to attract the attention of the three great forces, it was impossible. To the ferocious creatures that lived in the Naraka realm, Jiyu Fei and Old Tortoise were still very different. Along the way, undead creatures attacked them from time to time. The blood essence of Jiyu Fei and Old Tortoise was definitely something that undead creatures yearned for. There was a legend in the outer regions of hell that said that the blood essence of the saints that emerged from the depths of this world could regenerate the flesh and blood of undead creatures and transform them to a perfect state. Of course, legends were still legends after all. For thousands of years, there hadn't been a single undead creature that had been reborn and transformed into a perfect state. As for the holy race that lived in the depths of this world, they had only appeared in legends. After a few days, Jiyu Fei and Old Turtle entered the central region of Bone Emperor's territory. At this time, an explosive news spread among the undead creatures. Some people saw creatures with flesh and blood appearing in the territory ruled by Bone Emperor. Some powerful undead creatures began to search for the two living beings with flesh and blood. Old Turtle and Jiyu Fei, who were still unaware of the situation, found their way to the doorstep of Bone Emperor's territory. It was a huge city in the mountains. Jiyu Fei and Old Turtle appeared and wandered around the vicinity. They were eyeing the Bone Emperor. The huge city in the middle of the mountains was the Bone Emperor's base camp. Other than the huge city in the middle of the mountains, there were also traces of buildings on the other mountain peaks. However, those buildings had collapsed for countless years. Many of them had turned into rubble and bricks. Some of them only had a few outlines left on the ground. The bricks and tiles had been weathered and turned into dust. At this time, Jiyu Fei and Old Turtle were hiding in the ruins of a mountain peak near the huge city, closely watching the movements of the huge city in front of them. Dark clouds fluttered in the dusky sky, and there was a weak light between the heaven and the earth. The pitch-black night hadn't arrived yet, But there were already undead creatures moving about in the pitch-black city in front of them. In the hell path, there was no sun or moon. Undead creatures could walk in the dark at will, but they were most active during the period when the sky and earth were pitch-black. Undead creatures seemed to be afraid of light. Of course, undead creatures that were powerful enough weren't afraid. Behind the broken walls of the ruins, Gu Fei stared at the huge city in front of him and suddenly said, "I say, Old Turtle, why does this huge city look a bit familiar?" "What?" Old Turtle was startled and his pupils couldn't help but contract. The huge city in front of them was pitch-black like a peerless beast lurking between heaven and earth, giving off a strong sense of oppression. "You mean?" Old Turtle seemed to have realized something and his expression became extremely solemn. "The dead city in the virtual sky world," Gu Fei said calmly. Although the huge city in front of them wasn't as big as the dead city in the virtual sky world and was much smaller, this huge city gave Gu Fei a familiar feeling. Old Turtle frowned after hearing Gu Fei's words. The dead city in the virtual sky world could be said to be a terrifying and ominous city. That day in the dead city, Gu Fei, Old Turtle, and the others could be said to have narrowly escaped death. If it weren't for the mysterious expert who controlled the Tai Chi Yin and Yang diagram, even Old Turtle would have been trapped in the dead city and died. Gu Fei and Old Turtle looked at each other and saw fear in each other's eyes. Now that they recalled what they experienced in the dead city in the virtual sky world, both of them were still afraid. "What happened?" Old Turtle asked. The sudden appearance of a huge city in the mountains was completely incompatible with the surrounding terrain. It was as if the huge city was moved here by someone with great divine ability. The nearby mountains must have been a land of immortals in the past. Otherwise, there wouldn't be traces of buildings on every mountain peak. Perhaps it was because it was refined into a hell by the ancient Buddha that this area gradually became like this, a land of spiritual energy turned into a land of death. "It seems that if I don't attack from behind, I'm afraid I really can't deal with that Bone Emperor," Old Turtle murmured with a fierce and cunning look in his eyes. Seeing Old Turtle's appearance, Old Turtle trembled with fear and couldn't help but secretly pray for Bone Emperor. Bone Emperor was doomed to a tragedy. The huge city in front of them seemed to be strange, making both Old Turtle and Gu Fei feel uneasy. If it wasn't necessary, they absolutely wouldn't enter the huge city in front of them. The more Old Turtle looked at it, the more he felt that the huge city in front of them was very similar to the dead city in the virtual sky world, which made him very afraid. Just as Old Tortoise and Gu Fei were about to retreat, Old Tortoise's eyes suddenly widened so much that his eyeballs were about to pop out of his eye sockets. A chilling murderous intent emanated from Old Tortoise's body, causing the surrounding temperature to drop rapidly. "What's wrong?" Gu Fei was so frightened by Old Turtle's expression that he almost jumped up from the ground. He hurriedly followed Old Turtle's gaze, and the next moment, his jaw almost dropped to the ground. He was tongue-tied and shocked. It turned out that a white figure had appeared outside the gate of the huge city in front of them. Moreover, that person was bald. No wonder Old Turtle had such an expression. "Evil little bald donkey." After seeing that person, Old Turtle's widened eyes gradually turned red, and then they emitted raging flames of anger. Old Turtle was about to rush out of the ruins to settle scores with the little monk who walked out of the tomb of Lord Buddha, but Gu Fei reacted quickly and quickly reached out to stop Old Turtle. "Don't be impulsive," Gu Fei shouted in a low voice. "Don't stop me, or we won't be brothers anymore." Old Turtle seemed to have been blinded by anger. The appearance of the little monk made him lose his sense of propriety. "Listen to me. If you want to take revenge on him, I definitely won't stop you, but now is not the time." Gu Fei didn't let go and said calmly to Old Turtle, "If I don't take revenge now, when will I? If I miss this opportunity, it'll be difficult to find this evil little bald donkey again." Old Turtle swung his hand and shook off Gu Fei. "Listen to me first. Let this little monk test the Bone Emperor first. If they fight, we'll be the fishermen. You know what I mean," Gu Fei quickly said. He knew that he couldn't stop Old Turtle, so he could only use words to dispel Old Turtle's impulse. Old Tortoise was startled after hearing this, and his anger dissipated quite a bit. He looked at Gu Fei and said, I didn't expect you to have such a sinister side to you. Very well, no matter who wins or loses, it's a good thing for us. It's best if both of them are badly injured, and then we can take action and finish them both at the same time. Old Turtle's words were full of anger and murderous intent. They couldn't wait to tear that evil little monk into pieces and imprison his soul so that he could suffer the pain of having his soul refined. He would rather die than live. At this time, the little monk had already stopped in front of the city gate. He wore a white monastic robe and held a purple gold alms bowl in his hand. His face was indifferent and his entire body exuded a holy aura, giving him the charm of an immortal. The undead inside the city had already noticed the arrival of the little monk. The city tower was in a state of panic. The sudden arrival of a legendary character caused the undead guarding the city to turn pale with fright. Waves of violent soul fluctuations came from the city tower. The undead couldn't speak and could only communicate through soul fluctuations. Swoosh! A skeleton shrouded in black chi rushed down from the tower and landed in front of the little monk. Its pitch-black eyes shot out from its eye sockets and scanned the little monk. It seemed like it wanted to see into the depths of the little monk's heart. Who goes there? Within the skull of the skeleton shrouded in black energy, a pitch-black soul flame fiercely pulsated. Outside the infernal realm, rumors were spreading that a saint had appeared. Who would have thought that the legendary saint with perfect flesh and blood and soul would actually appear in front of him? Benefactor is too courteous. This monk wishes to pay a visit to the Bone Emperor of this place. Please pass on the message. The little monk was like an eminent monk. He raised one hand in front of him and chanted the name of Buddha. His face was peaceful and solemn as he spoke to the black skeleton. That guy really knows how to act. The old tortoise muttered to himself behind a broken wall in the ruins of the opposite mountain peak. The evil little monk had actually changed his appearance. His entire body emitted an otherworldly aura like that of an immortal. It was as if he didn't belong to the mortal world. Yes, that little monk really knows how to act. Could this be the legendary pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? His realm is higher than yours, Gu Fei said with a sluggish expression. When this little monk attacked the old tortoise, he was ruthless and vicious as if he was the reincarnation of the god of death. But now, he was acting like an enlightened monk. He was even more monstrous than the old tortoise. Pay a visit to the Bone Emperor? The black skeleton didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My emperor is thinking of ways to capture a sacred race member. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to my doorstep. I can wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find you by chance. Good. I'll pass the message to you. The black skeleton snickered in its heart. At this moment, a terrifying energy fluctuation suddenly spread out from the huge city. It was as if a dreadful prehistoric beast had suddenly awakened. A tragic aura surged out from the depths of the huge city like a stormy sea. This emperor is coming. A powerful soul force spread between heaven and earth. A huge figure rushed out from the huge city like a lightning bolt. A white skeleton that was blooming with divine light appeared in the sky above the city tower. A terrifying pressure spread in all directions, causing the heaven and earth to tremble. Its ferocious power was matchless. All the undead creatures inside and outside the huge city prostrated themselves on the ground. They were worshipping their supreme emperor. Under the pressure of the white skeleton, all the undead creatures were trembling with fear. They didn't dare to raise their heads. Even the black skeleton was no exception. The little monk's pink face immediately revealed a trace of astonishment. He raised his head and at the same time, a vast and auspicious power surged out from his body. Buddhist light seeped out from his body, making the little monk look as dignified and solemn as a deity or Buddha. Sacred race. When the Bone Emperor saw the little monk, the soul fire in his skull that was as bright as the sun immediately jumped a few times. Hey, you big guy, do you know where the origin of this world is? The little monk directly asked the godlike Bone Emperor in the sky. On a distant mountain peak, the old tortoise and Gu Fei couldn't help but be dumbfounded when they heard the little monk's words. The little monk was too heaven-defying. He actually dared to speak like this in front of the undead emperor. Chapter 480. Jiu Fei and the old tortoise were very surprised that the little monk who had walked out of the tomb of the Buddha had actually sought out the undying emperor, the Bone Emperor. Obviously, the little monk wouldn't have sought out the undying emperor for no reason. However, the old tortoise and Jiu Fei couldn't figure out why the little monk had sought out the Bone Emperor. Could the little monk's objective be the same as that of Jiu Fei and the old tortoise? These bald donkeys definitely know more than we do, the old tortoise said. Upon hearing this, Jiu Fei quickly understood why the old tortoise had said this. The current Buddhist sect was an orthodoxy that had been passed down from the ancient Buddha. There would definitely be records of the Hell Tao in the Buddhist sect's ancient books. The mysterious old monk at the peak of the Black Mountain seemed to have a mission to protect the Hell Tao. The little monk was really audacious. He had actually addressed the Bone Emperor as Big Fella. Although the Bone Emperor's bone body was much taller than the other undying creatures, no one had ever dared to be so presumptuous in front of him. The soul flame in the Bone Emperor's jade-like skull throbbed violently, but it didn't emit any soul fluctuations. The Bone Emperor was able to control his own soul fluctuations. Without batting an eyelid, the Bone Emperor said, "You are a guest from afar. Please come in and discuss in detail. This isn't a good place to talk." The Bone Emperor didn't make a move right away. He seemed to want to lure the little monk into the city. It had been countless years since a member of the sacred tribe with flesh, bones, and soul had appeared in this world. Now that he had encountered one, the Bone Emperor naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity to be reborn. Of course, the Bone Emperor didn't know that the little monk wasn't the legendary life form that lived in the depths of the divine realm. He also didn't know that the little monk actually came from the outside world. That little monk really seemed like an innocent youth. He actually followed the Bone Theacher's lead and walked into the huge city. Swish, 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 swish. After the little monk entered the huge city, 3 figures rushed out from the city gate tower and landed below the city gate, sealing off the little monk's path of retreat. From the looks of it, the Bone Emperor was determined to obtain the little monk. The silhouettes that rushed out from the tower were 3 undead creatures. The skulls of the 3 skeletons all emitted bright soul flames. Those soul flames were like blazing divine flames, incomparably blazing. Hee hee. That little monk is in trouble, old tortoise said with a chuckle, taking pleasure in the little monk's misfortune. It seemed to be his greatest pleasure to see the little monk suffer. Old Tortoise and Jiu Fei hid on the mountain peak in front of the giant city and witnessed everything that happened. That little monk is very shrewd. If he could even plot against you, how could he so easily follow the Bone Emperor into the city? Jiu Fei said thoughtfully. When Old Tortoise heard this, he also felt that something was amiss. Who was that little monk? Even I, Old Tortoise, suffered a great loss in his hands. How could he enter the city so carelessly and defenselessly? This didn't seem to make sense. Even I can see that the huge city in front of us is incomparably dangerous, so there's no reason that the little monk can't see it. Could it be that the little monk is really pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? Old Tortoise murmured. The 3 undead creatures outside the city gate were all stronger than the undead king that Old Tortoise killed. Moreover, the 3 undead creature skeletons were very different from ordinary undead creature skeletons. One of the skeletons emitted 5 colors. Every bone seemed to be condensed from 5 colored divine crystals, sparkling, translucent, and colorful. Even the resplendent soul flames in the skulls were like 5 colored divine flames that pulsated. As for the other 2 undead creatures, one of them was yellow in color, and there were streaks of yellow light curling around it, as if there were streaks of lightning curling around it, giving off a powerful and overbearing feeling. The other undead creature was purple in color, and its entire body seemed to be cast from purple gold godly iron. The vast and mighty soul fluctuations it emitted weren't any weaker than the other 2 undead creatures. The 3 undead creatures gathered with the pitch-black undead creature that was originally standing outside the city gate and walked into the city together. These 4 undead creatures were very extraordinary, and they had extraordinary skeletons. It could be seen that the skeletons of these 4 undead creatures were very powerful. Among all the undead creatures that Jiu Fei and Old Tortoise had seen so far, they were the most powerful ones apart from the undead emperor, the Bone Emperor. The Bone Emperor definitely didn't have good intentions in luring the little monk into the huge city. However, the little monk was definitely not an ordinary person. He was even more ruthless, wild, and cunning than Old Tortoise. As expected, very soon, a strange sound came from the huge pitch-black city in front of them. Rays of golden Buddhist light broke through the layers of gloomy clouds and ghostly mist and shot out from the huge city. So soon? Jiyu Fei asked in surprise. He didn't know if the little monk or the Bone Emperor had made the first move. However, Jiyu Fei and Old Tortoise were sure that the little monk and the Bone Emperor had clashed. Even though they were on a mountain peak several kilometers away, Jiyu Fei and Old Tortoise could still sense the Buddhist power and soul fluctuations coming from the huge city. Hihi, they're fighting. Great, that's great. It's best if both sides suffer, Old Tortoise said excitedly. With his current cultivation, there weren't many people that could make him apprehensive. The little monk and the Bone Emperor were two of them. Old Tortoise and Jiyu Fei were prepared to be the fishermen. Roar. Terrifying soul fluctuations spread out from the city and the entire huge city seemed to shake. Thousands of undead creatures were roaring. All the undead creatures inside and outside the city rushed towards a certain location in the huge city. Immediately after, a resplendent Buddhist light rushed out from the city. The auspicious Buddhist power was vast and mighty. The golden Buddhist light was like a golden tsunami that swept out in all directions, illuminating the entire dusky world. Amidst the endless Buddhist light, there seemed to be heavenly flowers falling, golden lotuses emerging, and Sanskrit sounds lingering. The pure and holy aura dispersed the evil aura that shrouded the heaven and earth. Following closely behind the Buddhist light was a resplendent soul fire that was as bright as the sun. The terrifying soul power formed layers of destructive light that enveloped the Buddhist light. Bam! Right at this moment, there was a huge tremor in the void. The mass of Buddhist light suddenly exploded and turned into 18 balls of dazzling brilliance that blazed like golden suns, falling down to the bottom of the giant city. Hiss! Seeing this scene, Old Tortoise couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. What a ruthless fellow. He actually used the Buddhist demon-slaying divine ability, Great Sun Divine Thunder. Great Sun Divine Thunder? When Jiyu Fei heard this, he couldn't help but ponder. He seemed to have never heard of or seen such a demon-slaying divine art in the ancient books. Could it be a lost Buddhist art? Rumble. The 18 balls of blazing golden light emitted a terrifying fluctuation of Buddhist power. Countless swastikas appeared on the 18 balls of Buddhist light. The terrifying power shook the entire world. It was as if 18 golden suns were falling down. Does he want to destroy this huge city? Old Tortoise was shocked. The Great Sun Divine Thunder was a forbidden cultivation technique of the Buddhist sect. It possessed great power and wouldn't be used unless it was a critical moment. Destroy the city? Jiyu Fei was shocked. This little monk was really pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. His goal was to destroy the Bone Emperor's nest. This was too crazy. Roar. The Bone Emperor roared, and the spirit fire in his skull soared into the sky. Terrifying spirit power surged towards the 18 Buddhist lights. However, at this moment, a purple gold arms bowl appeared silently above the Bone Emperor and smashed towards his head. There was no sound or any energy fluctuation. The purple gold arms bowl was completely silent and smashed into the Bone Emperor's skull without anyone noticing. Bam! The Bone Emperor, who was caught off guard, was sent flying. His spirit fire shook violently and was almost smashed out of his skull. Old Tortoise, learn a little. Your ability to smash a turtle shell is far inferior to other people's ability to smash arms bowls. Jiyu Fei shot a glance at Old Tortoise beside him. Fut. I'll learn from anyone but that fellow. Old Tortoise said agitatedly. He was already extremely displeased that he had been defeated by the little monk time and time again. However, it had to be said that the little monk's method of smashing the arms bowl was superb. The arms bowl came and went without a trace, making it impossible to guard against it. If one wasn't careful, one would fall into his trap and end up with an egg on one's forehead. However, the Bone Emperor's skull didn't have any flesh or blood. Even if he was smashed by the arms bowl, there wouldn't be an egg. At most, His skull would be split open and a hole would appear. Although the Bone Emperor had been sent flying by the little monk's alms bowl, his skull wasn't damaged at all. There wasn't even a trace of a collision. The Bone Emperor's skeleton was extremely powerful. Its hardness probably surpassed that of an ordinary divine bone. It was difficult to damage and was comparable to a precious treasure. Even the little monk's purple gold alms bowl couldn't damage it. However, it was still very sturdy. When the Bone Emperor was smashed by the little monk's purple gold alms bowl, the frightening soul attack that he had unleashed was instantly dispelled. The divine soul flames that filled the sky dissipated completely. 18 balls of terrifying Buddhist radiance that resembled golden suns descended from the sky. They were unstoppable. Although there were powerful undead creatures in the city that tried to stop the great sun divine thunder, the undead creatures that made a move were either shattered or sent flying. Instead of being smashed by the 18 balls of great sun divine thunder that contained boundless Buddhist power, the undead creatures that made a move were sent flying. Unless another Emperor-level expert like the Bone Emperor made a move, no one would be able to do anything. Boom. 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 18 balls of extremely powerful Buddhist light formed the divine thunder of the sun and finally smashed into the huge city. The originally peaceful Buddhist power became extremely violent at this moment. It was as though the sun had fallen from the sky. After the terrifying Buddhist radiance exploded, it swept out in all directions. Countless buildings below were destroyed by the Buddhist radiance and dust flew high into the sky. Rumble. The entire huge city shook violently as though there was a terrifying earthquake. The houses and pavilions collapsed one after another. The 18 balls of great sun divine thunder were 18 terrifying destructive powers. Countless undead creatures were turned into ashes by the Buddhist radiance. Even the tall city walls had terrifying cracks on them as though they could collapse at any time. The powerful airwaves that swept out toppled houses one after another as dust enveloped the entire huge city. Old Turtle and Jiu Fei were stunned when they saw this soul-stirring scene from the mountain peak. It was hard to imagine that the peaceful Buddhist radiance could actually transform into the terrifying light of death. 18 huge pits appeared in the city. Countless houses collapsed and countless undead creatures fled in all directions. It was as though the end of the world had arrived. Roar. When the Bone Emperor saw this scene, he went crazy. His base was almost destroyed. This caused him to go crazy with anger. He let out a long roar towards the sky. The spirit fire in his skull suddenly erupted, causing the entire sky and earth to be filled with resplendent light. He rushed towards the figure shrouded in the Buddhist radiance in the sky with lightning speed. The soul fire that rushed out from his skull was about to burn the 9 heavens. Boom. Endless soul force condensed into a huge hand that directly shattered the void. It blasted towards the little monk with a destructive power that could obliterate everything. Swish. The little monk directly opened his inner world. A resplendent golden Buddhist land immediately appeared in the void. It emitted endless Buddhist radiance and shrouded the Bone Emperor who was rushing over. Rumble. The huge hand that was condensed from soul force was like an ancient sacred mountain. It moved in the void and everywhere it passed, the void collapsed and the heaven and earth shook. The huge hand directly blasted into the little monk's inner world. The Bone Emperor also followed the huge hand and rushed into the little monk's inner world. After the little monk received the Bone Emperor into his inner world, he immediately disappeared in the void. No one knew where he went. He had also entered his inner world. Swish, swish, swish. 4 figures rushed out from the city below. At this moment, an old monk that looked like a mummy suddenly appeared in the sky above the 4 undead creatures. He opened his huge hand and pressed it down. A golden Buddhist radiance descended from the old monk's hand. Bang! The 4 undead creatures were directly knocked down from the sky by the old monk. Among them, the undead creature with black bones and the undead creature with yellow bones shattered in the void as they fell from the sky. Only 2 dazzling soul fires managed to escape. That old bald donkey. When the old turtle saw the old monk, his anger flared up again. The old monk was the almighty Buddhist who had caused him to suffer a loss on the Black Mountain. The old turtle wanted to rush out, but he was stopped by Jiu Fei. Jiu Fei shook his head at the old turtle, indicating that he shouldn't act blindly without thinking. The old turtle thought about it, but in the end, he didn't rush out to settle the score with the old monk. He and Jiu Fei remained hidden on a distant mountain peak, closely watching everything that was happening in front of them. No one had expected that the little monk had actually joined forces with the mysterious old monk. The little monk possessed a forbidden divine ability like the great sun divine thunder. With the old monk supporting him from the dark, it was no wonder that he dared to enter the Bone Emperor's lair alone. The old monk's methods were also incomparably violent. He used the Vajra demon subduing power to send the 4 undead creatures flying. He even directly shattered the bones of 2 of the undead creatures. Only the 5-colored skeleton and the purple-gold skeleton didn't shatter. They crashed into the city like meteorites, causing the earth to shake. Following that, the old monk didn't attack the 5-colored skeleton and the purple-gold skeleton. Instead, he directly rushed down to the huge city below and entered it. At this time, after the baptism of the great sun divine thunder, the entire huge city was almost half destroyed. After the old monk rushed into the city, he seemed to be searching for something. Finally, he directly broke through the ground at the center of the huge city and went underground. Very soon, the entire huge city began to shake again, and the shaking became more and more intense. The ground cracked, and then a tricolored divine light shot out from the cracks. Following that, the old monk rushed out of the ground with an ancient lamp in his hand. It was an ancient bronze lamp that was only a foot tall. What was shocking was that it was still burning. On the wick of the lamp, a tricolored divine flame the size of a soybean danced continuously. The tricolored divine flame emitted 3 colors: purple, white, and gold. The lamp wasn't bright, but the purple, white, and gold lights illuminated the entire world, dispelling the endless demonic aura. This part of the world was bathed in the light of the divine lamp. When the old turtle saw the ancient lamp in the old monk's hand, his eyes immediately lit up. He excitedly said, "That is. I didn't expect this thing to be suppressed under the ancient city." "What is that?" Jiu Fei asked. He could already see that the ancient lamp in the old monk's hand was extraordinary. It seemed to be able to purify all demonic aura. The undead creatures that were bathed in the tricolored divine light all rolled on the ground with their hands around their heads. The soul flames in their skulls were violently pulsing, emitting frightening spiritual waves. The soul flames were actually showing signs of dimming. The weak undead creatures outside the city did not have powerful strength. The soul flames in their skulls were rapidly weakening. In the end, they were completely extinguished, leaving only their bones rolling on the ground. That's the item of the Buddhist Lord. It's the tricolored 3 realms Buddhist lamp that is said to be able to illuminate the 3 realms, the old turtle murmured. 3 realms lamp? Jiu Fei exclaimed. It was actually a Buddhist artifact left behind by the Buddhist Lord. Jiu Fei could not help but feel inexplicably shocked. It should be known that in the Tenglong continent, there had never been a Buddhist artifact used by the ancient Buddhist Lord. A Buddhist artifact used by the ancient Buddhist Lord was definitely extraordinary. This thing can't fall into the hands of the little monk and the old monk, the old turtle said with incomparable seriousness. The 3 realms lamp could illuminate the endless hell and was the nemesis of all evil creatures in hell. With the 3 realms lamp, it was equivalent to having a protective shield in the legendary hell. Just as the old tortoise was about to rush out and snatch the lamp of the 3 realms, the void above the giant city suddenly shook violently. Then, a part of the void suddenly shattered and a figure rushed out from the shattered void. The person who rushed out from the shattered void was none other than the invincible emperor among the undead creatures, the Bone Emperor. Chapter 481. The Bone Emperor was indeed worthy of being an invincible emperor within a radius of thousands of miles. He was actually able to rush out of the little monk's inner world. Although he was in a sorry state, it was still something to be proud of. The inner world was created by an almighty who had great magical powers. It was created by splitting open the void. All the laws within the inner world were established by the will of the Almighty. Being trapped in the inner world was equivalent to entering a world controlled by an Almighty. In this world, the Almighty who created the inner world was a supreme God. However, Even though the little monk controlled a Buddhist kingdom, it was still difficult for him to trap the Bone Emperor. One could imagine how powerful and terrifying the Bone Emperor was. War. The Bone Emperor howled at the sky, and the soul fire in his skull emitted an unprecedentedly powerful soul energy. Transparent ripples spread out in all directions with the Bone Emperor at the center. The soul energy had already reached a level that was visible to the naked eye. The Bone Emperor was enraged. It was obvious that he had suffered a great loss in the little monk's inner world. Countless cracks had appeared on his terrifying bone body, which surpassed that of a divine bone. The soul power surged on his bone body and emitted a resplendent brilliance. The cracks on his bone body gradually healed and disappeared as powerful soul power nourished his bone body. The Bone Emperor broke through the void and rushed out of the little monk's inner world, which surprised everyone. The mysterious old monk who was holding the tricolored Three Realms Buddhist lamp hurriedly channeled Buddhist power into the ancient lamp in his hand. The soybean-sized flower on the ancient lamp immediately lit up, and the tricolored divine radiance circulated. An auspicious aura surged out of the ancient lamp and surged between heaven and earth. Although the tricolored divine radiance on the ancient lamp wasn't dazzling, it was like a bright lamp. Its gentle radiance illuminated the entire heaven and earth, and an unfathomable power purified all demonic aura. A large number of weak undead creatures outside the city silently collapsed. The soul fire in their skulls was extinguished under the illumination of the tricolored divine lamp. Even the powerful undead creatures in the city retreated into the shadows, not daring to be exposed to the tricolored Buddhist radiance. Although the light emitted by the Three Realms lamp was gentle, it possessed an unfathomable power. It was the nemesis of undead creatures and could purify their soul fire. Damn it! The Bone the Arch bellowed angrily as boundless spiritual divine light erupted from his body. It was as though a resplendent sun had suddenly appeared in the pitch-black world. Terrifying soul power erupted like a volcano, shaking the heavens and earth. The void where the Bone the Arch was couldn't withstand this power and instantly collapsed, leaving him in chaos. The Bone Emperor's ferocious might was unparalleled. He had actually used his soul god light to contend against the tricolored Buddha light emitted by the ancient lamp. The two forces collided, and the Bone Emperor's soul god light actually managed to resist the tricolored Buddha light that seemed to be able to purify all demonic chi. Just as the Bone Emperor and the old monk were facing off, a purple gold arms bowl suddenly shattered the void and appeared above the Bone Emperor's head. Bang! The Bone Emperor was once again ruthlessly smashed. Roar! Little fellow, I'm going to tear you apart. The Bone Emperor's skull emitted a furious mental wave as he was sent flying once again. The old monk took the opportunity to activate the Three-Realm lamp and sprinkle down a gentle Buddhist light. More than half of the Bone Theacher's soul divine fire instantly dissipated. Swish! The void shattered, and the white figure walked out of it. She reached out with a tender little hand and caught the purple gold arms bowl that had been sent flying back. It had to be said that the little monk's methods were truly vicious and vicious. He didn't seem like a Buddhist almighty at all. He was more like a hooligan. The monk had clearly fought with the Bone Emperor in his own inner world. His monk robes were torn in several places, and a trace of blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. It seemed like even though the little monk controlled an inner world, he didn't seem to have the upper hand in his battle with the Bone Emperor. It seemed like both sides had suffered heavy losses. The little monk and the mummified old monk were about to chase after the Bone Emperor, but at this moment, a loud bang resounded. A muffled sound rang out. Just as the little monk was wondering why this sound sounded so familiar, he saw the old monk fall from the sky. Behind the old monk, a majestic-looking middle-aged man in a purple robe appeared. The middle-aged man was holding the Three-Realm lamp in one hand and the stone turtle shell in the other. He looked at the little monk with a faint smile. "It's you, old demon." The little monk's heart skipped a beat when he saw the purple-robed middle-aged man, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. A Buddhist chant was heard, and the old monk, who had been smashed down by the old turtle's turtle shell, soared into the sky. His entire body emitted a resplendent Buddhist glow as he closed in on Jiu Fei. There was a huge bump on the back of the old monk's head. It was obvious that it was the old turtle's doing. The old monk's body was rather sturdy. After being smashed by the turtle shell, his head didn't explode and he only swelled up like an egg. This indeed surprised the old turtle. "Hand over the 3-realm lamp, and we can let you live." The little monk held the purple gold arms bowl and closed in on the old turtle at the same time. How could two Buddhist almighty not deal with an old demon? "TSK. You should deal with that fellow first." The old turtle had a look of disdain as he pointed at the Bone Emperor, who had been sent flying thousands of feet away by the little monk's purple gold arms bowl. The Bone Emperor was truly enraged. He was extremely enraged. That little fellow was simply too hateful. He actually wanted to use underhanded means against him. As an invincible ruler of a region, the Bone Emperor had lost all face today. He had been smashed in the skull twice in a single day. It was a great humiliation. "All of you, go to hell." The Bone Emperor roared crazily. The soul fire in his bones burned fiercely, emitting a vast and terrifying energy wave that shook the entire world. Even the huge city below was affected. When the undead creatures within a radius of several hundred miles sensed the terrifying aura emitted by the Bone Emperor, they all trembled with fear. The weaker undead creatures even knelt on the ground and kowtowed in the direction of the huge city. The Bone Emperor seemed to be burning his soul. Boundless soul power transformed into destructive flames that covered the sky and enveloped the entire sky. It emitted a boundless aura of destruction. It was as if a world was pressing down on everyone from the sky. Rumble. The terrifying power shattered the void and shattered the earth. The sound of buildings collapsing could be heard from the huge city below, and dust flew high into the sky from time to time. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. The power of destruction filled the world, emitting a terrifying might that could destroy heaven and earth. The old turtle and the two baldies couldn't help but be moved. The Bone Emperor was going all out. When an invincible ruler went all out, it was an extremely terrifying thing. Swish. The old turtle didn't even think as he turned into a beam of purple light and rushed into the distant sky like a bolt of lightning. With the 3-realm lamp in hand, he immediately fled. Roar. The little monk roared angrily. He wanted to chase after the Bone Emperor and take back the 3-realm lamp, but the Bone Emperor's terrifying divine sense had already locked him and the old monk. The void around the two of them seemed to have solidified as it was sealed by the Bone Emperor's powerful divine sense. It was as if they were trapped in a swamp, and their movements were greatly affected. The Bone Emperor's target of attack wasn't the old turtle, but the little monk and the mysterious old monk who had joined forces with the little monk. Perhaps because the old monk was also a Baldai, the Bone Emperor had also included the old monk in his list of targets. During this moment of hesitation, the old turtle had already rushed over 5 kilometers away. Seeing that he was about to disappear into the dusky world, the little monk and the old monk were burning with anxiety. They immediately used their power to shatter the void and rushed out of the void that was sealed by the Bone Emperor's destructive flames. They chased after the old turtle. "Where do you think you're going?" The Bone Emperor controlled the destructive flames formed by the boundless soul power and chased after the little monk and the old monk. Not only did the flames illuminate the world, but they also burned the void. Everywhere it passed, the world turned into chaos. The Bone Emperor was too powerful and terrifying. Almost no one could suppress him. Soon, the 4 supreme experts disappeared from the dusky world of the Hell Path. The terrifying pressure that enveloped the mountains also disappeared, and countless undead creatures finally dared to come out of the darkness. At this time, a figure stood up on the mountain peak in front of the huge city. The powerful undead creatures were either killed or maimed by the little monk and the old monk. "I got off easy." Jiu Fei was very happy. He walked out of the ruins on the mountain with a smile on his face. He wasn't afraid of being discovered by the undead creatures, so he walked down the mountain and headed straight for the huge city. The majestic ancient castle in front of him was completely made of dark brown boulders. It looked as if it had been stained with blood, and the bloodstains had already dried and turned black. The huge city occupied a very large area and was surrounded by black fog. From a distance, it looked gloomy and terrifying. However, the huge city was already half destroyed. The pitch-black walls were covered with cracks. The little monk's great son Divine Thunder was powerful enough to destroy the world. It was already a miracle that the city hadn't been completely destroyed. Ji Fei and the old tortoise worried too much. Although the appearance of this huge city was somewhat similar to the ancient ominous city in the virtual sky world, the two obviously couldn't be compared to each other. However, no one expected a Buddhist tool to be suppressed under the huge city. They didn't know how the little monk and the old monk knew there was a Buddhist tool under the huge city. However, Ji Fei didn't care about this. His goal was to harvest the soul fires of the undead creatures. That was a good thing. The endless soul power could not only temper the body, but also the soul. Ji Fei was extremely excited at the thought of the countless soul fires of the undead creatures in the huge city waiting for him to harvest. So many soul fires were enough for his cultivation level to rise to the next level. Ji Fei took one step and soon arrived at the gate of the huge city. When he got closer, he felt that this huge city was really very majestic. Obviously, this huge city had existed for countless years. Ji Fei could feel an ancient and vicissitudes of life. The undead creatures in the city also noticed Ji Fei, and the city was suddenly in chaos. All the undead creatures were frightened by the mere twang of a bowstring and panicked. The legendary Holy Clan was extremely powerful and comparable to their emperors. Many undead creatures chose to retreat immediately. Many of them even rushed out of the huge city and disappeared into the darkness. Stop. At this time, more than a dozen powerful undead creatures rushed out of the city gate, and a powerful spiritual fluctuation spread out. Ji Fei snickered and continued to stride forward. Kill. Without any superfluous words, seeing that Ji Fei was still pressing forward, the more than a dozen undead creatures didn't hesitate and rushed at Ji Fei together. Ji Fei directly punched. Bam! With a bang, the skeleton of one of the undead creatures at the front exploded, leaving only a bone that fell from the sky. Ji Fei stretched out his 5 fingers and directly grabbed the skull in his hand. Then, his 5 fingers directly penetrated the skull and lifted the skull's crown. Then, a black hole appeared in the palm of Ji Fei's left hand, and the resplendent soul fire in the skull was sucked into the mountain and river cauldron. From shattering the skeleton of the undead creature with a single punch, to penetrating its skull, opening its skull, and collecting its soul flame, this series of actions was completed in just a short moment, and it was done in one go. The undead creatures were shocked and retreated one after another. They scattered and surrounded Ji Fei. However, none of them dared to attack Ji Fei. Ji Fei's thunderous methods deterred this group of undead creatures. Who dares to behave atrociously in my main imperial city? A powerful spiritual fluctuation spread out from the city, and a colorful figure appeared at the city gate and walked out step by step. Ji Fei felt a strong pressure. The powerful guy that walked out of the city was the undead creature with the colorful bone body. Ji Fei saw with his own eyes that the undead creature with the colorful bone body was blasted down from the sky by the old monk, and he knew that it had been seriously injured. Why do you care who I am? I want your soul fire. Ji Fei was incomparably powerful. He took a big step forward and directly attacked the colorful bone body that walked out of the city. He straightened his palm like a saber and directly chopped forward. A bright chi shot out from the edge of his palm and turned into a bright saber chi. It cut through the void like a heavenly saber and chopped down on the head of the 5-colored skeleton. Ji Fei's attack was simple and direct. However, this martial skill, which had been simplified, displayed a great power. Terrifying blade chi swept out in all directions, causing the surrounding undead creatures to be sent flying. The multicolored skeleton also gave off an indomitable aura. It walked out from the shadows of the city gate and punched at the saber light that was slashing down. Clang! The colorful fist collided with the blade chi, and an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing was heard. The place where the fist and the blade chi collided was filled with sparks. Bang! 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 Chapter 482. The multicolored skeleton was incomparably powerful. Its bone body emitted a multicolored glow, but it didn't have the slightest bit of demonic aura. The multicolored soul light in its skull pulsated like a multicolored divine flame. 2 beams of divine light shot out from its eye sockets. They were several feet long and looked like multicolored divine swords. They pierced through the void and swept towards Gu Fei. Sacred race? The multicolored skeleton was very surprised. Tonight was really too crazy. There were actually 4 living beings with flesh and blood. It seemed that the legendary sacred race really existed. The multicolored skeleton seemed to be very afraid of Gu Fei and didn't attack. It was said that the sacred race that lived in the depths of this world was an existence comparable to an invincible emperor. Just now, the 3 sacred race beings with flesh and blood displayed their terrifying battle strength. Even the bone emperor of the undead creatures was at a disadvantage. Swish. Gu Fei used the 8 desolate steps and displayed the extreme speed of 8 steps. In an instant, he approached the multicolored skeleton and pointed his finger. Kai. The multicolored finger light pierced through the void and pierced towards the skull of the multicolored skeleton like a divine sword. The 8 desolate steps were extremely fast. Within the same realm, no one could compare to Gu Fei in terms of speed. Gu Fei's speed was so fast that it was difficult to see with the naked eye. However, the multicolored skeleton was an undead creature. It didn't have eyes and could only use its soul power to sense everything around it. It directly transmitted the surrounding information to its skull, which was much faster than using its eyes to see. Swish. The multicolored skeleton left an afterimage in its original position and retreated like a multicolored lightning. The extremely sharp finger light brushed past its forehead and a scratch appeared on its incomparably hard skull. Bam! Gu Fei followed like a shadow and pressed his palm on the chest of the multicolored skeleton. Catcher! The 5-colored skeleton's sternum immediately cracked, and it flew into the city gate. Gu Fei was a martial artist at the 5th heaven of the void controlling realm. Every move he made contained an incomparably powerful divine power. The palm strike he made with all his strength combined the power of his physical body and the power of the martial artist's genuine chi. Even if it was a mountain, it would explode after receiving this palm strike. However, the 5-colored skeleton only had its sternum shattered. One could imagine just how tough its 5-colored skeleton was. It was practically comparable to godly metal. Raw. Go to hell. The multicolored skeleton was furious. A brilliant multicolored divine light burst out from the city gate. It was the phenomenon of a powerful soul power suddenly erupting. Terrifying soul fluctuations surged out from the city gate. Endless soul lights formed thousands of swords that covered the sky and shot towards Gu Fei outside the city gate. The nearby undead creatures were all frightened and fled. The entire city gate shook. Although the multicolored skeleton was seriously injured, it still had terrifying combat power. If the multicolored skeleton was not injured by the old monk and was not illuminated by the 3 realms lamp's tricolored divine light, which greatly weakened its soul power, Gu Fei would never dare to come and harvest the soul fire. The multicolored skeleton was undoubtedly powerful. When it was at its peak, it was comparable to a demigod. But now, it was seriously injured. The multicolored skeleton was full of cracks and its strength had fallen to the imperial void realm. Gu Fei thought that with his current cultivation and strength, he should be able to fight with this multicolored skeleton. Fist of fire! Gu Fei shouted and directly punched forward. A dazzling fiery red aura immediately surged from his fist and surged forward. Under this punch, it seemed to have attracted the heavenly fire. The surrounding temperature suddenly rose sharply. The fire true chi turned into a monstrous flame divine light and collided with the overwhelming multicolored swords. Rumble! The collision of the 2 forces shook the void and shook the heaven and earth. Countless multicolored swords were crushed by the fiery fist force. At the same time, Gu Fei's fist force was also offset by the powerful soul power. In the end, the 2 forces collided and wore each other out. The fiery fist force and the multicolored swords dissipated in the void almost at the same time. The 2 great experts seemed to be equally matched, and no one could gain any advantage. Gu Fei and the multicolored skeleton both had the strength of the imperial void realm, but Gu Fei was a martial artist with unparalleled combat power. His body was comparable to divine iron, and he could challenge opponents who were a level higher than him. Although he only had the cultivation of the 5th heaven of the imperial void realm, it was enough to rival the multicolored skeleton. Crack! With the sound of bones breaking, Ji Yufei used the 8 desolate steps and instantly rushed to the front of an undead creature. He broke its skull and collected the soul fire into the mountain and river cauldron in his right hand. You! The multicolored skeleton was furious. It didn't expect Ji Yufei to kill other undead creatures when he was fighting against it. This person from the sacred clan didn't take it seriously at all. The multicolored skeleton had a feeling of being looked down upon, and this feeling made it angry. The multicolored skeleton rushed forward and released a multicolored light that enveloped Ji Yufei. Within the multicolored light, there were faint multicolored stars that flickered. Ji Yufei didn't fight with it head-on. He avoided the multicolored skeleton's attack with the 8 extreme steps and continued to attack the surrounding undead creatures. His purpose of coming here wasn't to fight with the undead creatures, but to harvest the soul fire. Ji Yufei wasn't willing to waste time on entangling with the multicolored skeleton. Although the Bone Emperor had left, who knew when he would return? An undead creature as powerful as the Bone Emperor could probably kill him with one finger. In just a short while, Ji Yufei killed 5 or 6 undead creatures and collected their soul fire. Roar! The multicolored skeleton was furious and chased after Ji Yufei. It couldn't wait to tear Ji Yufei into pieces, but it couldn't even touch the corner of Ji Yufei's clothes. The 8 extreme steps was too fast. The multicolored skeleton couldn't stop Ji Yufei at all. At this moment, a few powerful soul waves came from the city. Ji Yufei knew that other powerful undead creatures were heading towards the city gate. He killed 2 undead creatures with lightning speed and collected their soul fire before retreating decisively. Although he wanted to retreat, the undead creatures wanted to keep him here. Just as Ji Yufei rushed out of the encirclement, a purple figure rushed out of the city. The purple gold skeleton, whose strength wasn't inferior to the multicolored skeleton, had arrived. The 2 undead creatures, whose strength was comparable to the 8th or 9th heavens of the void controlling realm, attacked together. Ji Yufei had no chance of winning at all. A wise man knows when to retreat. He soared into the sky and retreated. Want to leave? Not so easy. The multicolored skeleton and the purple gold skeleton soared into the sky and charged at Ji Yufei with a murderous aura. Ji Yufei strode in the void. Each step he took was a few hundred meters. With the 8 extreme step speed, he left as though he was taking a stroll in the park. However, he seemed to be deliberately luring the multicolored skeleton and the purple gold skeleton away from the ancient city. He didn't leave them behind completely. Ji Yufei seemed to be deliberately luring the multicolored skeleton and the purple gold skeleton to the desolate land. He chose to fly towards the depths of the mountains, keeping a distance from the 2 undead creatures behind him. Soon, Ji Yufei and the 2 undead creatures that chased after him were far away from the ancient city and came to the depths of the mountains. This place was covered with dense fog and desolation. There wasn't any vegetation. Between the mountains, dried-up lakes and rivers could be seen from time to time. Obviously, this area wasn't as lifeless as it was now. Ji Yufei stopped at the foot of a mountain peak. "Why aren't you running away?" Immediately, a strong spiritual fluctuation came from behind Ji Yufei. After that, 2 rainbow lights descended from the sky and landed on the ground. The multicolored skeleton and the purple gold skeleton formed an encirclement and pressed towards Ji Yufei. Their powerful spiritual fluctuations were vast and mighty at the foot of the mountain. They didn't dare to be careless. In the depths of the deathly silent mountains, not even a blade of grass grew. It was incomparably desolate. "You dared to kill my undead clan in my main imperial city. Do you still think you can leave here alive?" The purple gold skeleton took a step forward and disappeared in an instant. It pressed towards Ji Yufei. The purple gold skeleton seemed to be more powerful than the multicolored skeleton. "Humph." Ji Yufei sneered and didn't reply. However, he didn't show any weakness either. He responded with a palm blade. The resplendent blade light illuminated the dusky world. The 2 great experts collided with each other in an instant. There was a huge collision. The powerful energy fluctuations that exploded caused dust and sand to soar into the sky. The purple gold skeleton's strength was incomparably powerful. It seemed to be even more powerful than the multicolored skeleton. Ji Fei was unexpectedly forced to retreat continuously. Although the purple gold skeleton had also suffered from the old monk's attack, cracks had appeared on its body and the soul fire in its skull had dimmed a lot. Its vitality had been injured, but it still possessed terrifying combat strength. Don't kill him. Capture him and bring him back. The multicolored skeleton had a domineering aura. Within the multicolored skull, the exuberant soul fire was as bright as the bright moon. Although it was also advancing towards Ji Fei, it didn't make a move immediately. The sacred clan that lived in the central region of this world had blood essence that could allow the undead clan to regenerate their flesh and blood, transforming them to a perfect state. This legend had been passed down for countless years. Obviously, the multicolored skeleton didn't want to miss this opportunity to gain merit. If it could capture this sacred clan member alive, the bone the arch would definitely reward it handsomely. The purple gold skeleton nodded. It seemed to be very conceited. It drew a slender bone sword from its spine and continuously slashed at Ji Fei. Its powerful soul power condensed into a resplendent sword aura. Every slash seemed to split the void in an instant. Ji Fei really didn't seem to be a match for the purple gold skeleton. He retreated again and again as if he didn't even have the strength to retaliate. Under the purple gold skeleton's attacks, he was in a perilous situation. Although the purple gold skeleton was just a skeleton, its strength was extremely terrifying. Its divine bones, which were flowing with divine light, emitted a formidable pressure. It had the demeanor of a peerless expert. Swish. The purple sword light was like a heavenly sword. It emitted an incomparably cold sword aura as it slashed towards Ji Fei's side. Ji Fei narrowly avoided this sword. However, even though he had avoided the sword, he couldn't avoid a fist that was surrounded by purple light. It was a fist made of purple bones that didn't have any flesh or blood. Although this fist was made of bones, it contained an incomparably powerful force. Bam! Ji Fei was sent flying by the purple gold skeleton's fist. His body heavily slammed into the mountain wall behind him before bouncing back and smashing into the ground. Some crushed rocks rolled down from the mountain wall. A fist mark appeared on his chest. A trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He was injured. The purple gold skeleton's fist was incomparably powerful. The fist mark had sunk deep into his body. Ji Fei was very surprised. His corporeal body was already comparable to divine metal. Even if a martial cultivator's spirit treasure struck his body, it wouldn't be able to injure him in the slightest. However, the purple gold skeleton's fist had actually injured his corporeal body. How can a sacred clan member be so weak? The purple gold skeleton said disdainfully as it strode forward. After that, it extended its hand to grab Ji Fei, who was on the ground. Its godly bones were far tougher than godly metal, so it was not worried that Ji Fei's attack would cause any damage to its body. Be careful. Suddenly, the multicolored skeleton let out a loud shout. The purple golden skeleton was startled. Soon after, it sensed a purple divine light flashing by. Kacha. It pierced into its skull. At this time, it was unknown when a simple and unadorned long sword had appeared in Ji Fei's hand. The hilt of the sword was in Ji Fei's hand, but the tip of the sword had already pierced into the purple gold skeleton's skull. No. The purple gold skeleton was horrified. It never imagined that a sword would suddenly appear in Ji Fei's hand. Moreover, this sword was actually able to pierce through the formidable body of bones that it was so proud of. It wanted to struggle on its deathbed. However, Ji Fei wouldn't give it the chance to do so. Ji Fei shook the long sword in his hand. An extremely swift and fierce sword chi immediately erupted from the purple gold skeleton's skull. Bang! With a sound, the purple gold skeleton's skull exploded. The purple soul flame in the skull also burst out in all directions like purple fireworks. Ji Fei stretched out his left hand. Immediately, a black hole appeared in his palm. All the soul flames that had exploded were swallowed into the black hole in his hand. The multicolored skeleton was shocked to the extreme. The soul flames in the skull were beating violently, emitting bursts of intense soul fluctuations. The purple gold skeleton was actually killed by a weak sacred clan member. The multicolored skeleton couldn't accept this outcome for a moment. You should also go to hell, Ji Fei said coldly. His eyes emitted a gaze that was as sharp as a knife's edge. He glanced at the multicolored skeleton. His gaze didn't reveal any emotional fluctuations. It was extremely cold. It made the multicolored skeleton feel as if it was being stared at by the god of death. This made it feel fear. The multicolored skeleton glanced at the ancient sword in Ji Fei's hand. After that, it actually turned around and fled without even turning its head back. The multicolored light soared into the sky like a rainbow, wanting to escape from this place. However, at this moment, Ji Fei had already drawn his sword. A resounding clang could be heard. The sound was like the roar of a dragon and the cry of a phoenix. In an instant, a purple brilliance suddenly shot out from Ji Fei's hand. The purple brilliance extended for 3,000 to 4,000 feet and shot straight at the bulldog star. This purple sword light was so bright that it was like a purple sun. The sword chi's cold radiance was pressing. In an instant, it illuminated the entire heaven and earth. Even the mountains were illuminated in purple. Chapter 483. In order to kill the multicolored skeleton, Ji Fei once again used the purple gold divine sword in his right hand. He had been acting just now. He had purposely pretended that he was no match for the purple gold skeleton in order to make the skeleton lower its guard. In the end, he had even gritted his teeth and endured the purple gold skeleton's punch. Ji Fei's actions were definitely worth it because he had successfully made the strongest purple gold skeleton lower its guard. Then, he had caught it off guard and used the purple gold divine sword to kill it. The purple gold skeleton's soul fire was as bright as the moon. Its soul power was incomparably strong. Even the soul power obtained from killing 100 other undead creatures could not compare to the soul fire of the purple gold skeleton. This time, if it wasn't for the fact that he had already killed the purple gold skeleton, he absolutely wouldn't have used this treasure. It must be known that it was only a small test of his strength the last time. After unleashing this sword strike, it had almost exhausted all of his primordial chi. Swoosh! The purple sword light soared for 3,000 to 4,000 feet. Under the sword light, it was as if the world had been split into two. The resplendent sword light caught up to the multicolored skeleton in an instant. Then, the body of the multicolored skeleton was like ice and snow. Under the sword light, it silently turned into the void. Even the soul fire in the skull was completely annihilated in the void. The terrifying sword light displayed a frightening power. After killing the multicolored skeleton, it rushed up into the sky. Only then did the sword light gradually weaken and finally disappeared between heaven and earth. The power of the sword was earth-shattering, causing the world to lose its color. Wherever the sword light passed, a 3,000 to 4,000 feet long spatial crack appeared in the void. Inside the spatial crack, an extremely chaotic and terrifying aura was emitted. It was filled with destructive power. The power of heaven and earth was automatically repairing the collapsed void. The spatial crack was gradually becoming smaller. In the end, the collapsed void would reappear and the spatial crack would disappear. This was the power of heaven and earth. Unless the power of heaven and earth was used to destroy the origin of heaven and earth, the collapsed void would repair itself. This was the power of heaven and earth. Preposterous. Every time I use it, I feel a sense of apprehension. If my cultivation was the same as that old turtle, not to mention this little undead creature, I would even be able to kill the Bone Emperor with a single slash. As he slashed out with his sword, Ji Fei felt the yuan qi gushing out of his body like a tidal wave. He was both shocked and helpless. In the end, it was because his cultivation was not high enough, even if he had such a powerful killing weapon in his hand. He didn't dare to use it too often. Every time he used it, he had to be very determined. According to the speed at which the purple gold divine sword was devouring vital chi, even if his cultivation had broken through to the demigod realm, it would be difficult for him to slash out more than a few times. An extreme weapon was indeed an extreme weapon. It was not something that an ordinary person could casually use. With Ji Fei's current cultivation, even if he risked his life, he would only be able to swing his sword once more. If he still couldn't kill his enemy after swinging his sword twice, then it would be his turn to be captured and be at the mercy of others. This was because after slashing out 2 times, even if his yuan qi was as vast as the sea and his divine power was inexhaustible, he would still collapse to the ground like a puddle of mud. At that time, he wouldn't even be able to move a finger, let alone escape. What a pity! Ji Yufei couldn't help but feel a sense of pity when he saw the 5-colored skeleton's soul fire being annihilated by the sword light. One had to know that it was an incomparably powerful soul power. Ji Yufei's face had already turned as pale as a sheet. He felt like he was about to collapse. At least half of the vigorous yuan qi in his body had been drawn out by the divine sword. Ji Yufei felt that he couldn't take it, but he was also looking forward to his cultivation being raised to the point where he could use the purple-gold divine sword at will. He really wanted to know how shocking the scene would be when the divine sword unleashed its full power. He wanted to know if it really had the power to destroy heaven and earth like the legends said. Ji Yufei knew that the sword qi displayed by his sword was too powerful, and it had definitely attracted the attention of the nearby undead creatures. He didn't dare to stay any longer. He turned around and rushed into the depths of the mountains, quickly disappearing into the mountains. In the desolate world, mountains stood tall in the underworld fog and yin qi. There was no sign of life at all. There seemed to be nothing on all the mountains except rocks. The hell path was a world of death. It was truly hell. However, it was obvious that the hell path refined by the ancient Buddhist lord could only be considered a half-finished product. This was because there was no order here. It was a world where the law of the jungle was vividly displayed. Here, the strong were king. Because of this, there was a chaotic situation where the strong divided and fought endlessly with each other. Not long after Ji Yufei left, a terrifying figure shrouded in the underworld fog appeared at the place where Ji Yufei and the 2 undead creatures were fighting. The world suddenly became gloomy and terrifying. In the underworld fog, there seemed to be tens of thousands of ghosts faintly appearing. The ghostly cries emitted a cold and evil aura that made one's hair stand on end. Experts from the undead clan have perished here. Waves of mental power were transmitted from the churning and eerie underworld fog. Who killed them? I heard that the sacred clan has appeared in the Bone Emperor's territory. Could it be the legendary sacred clan who did this? 2 dark green lights suddenly lit up in the underworld fog. The 2 specks of dark green light were like 2 will-o'-the-wisps that floated in the underworld fog. Powerful spiritual fluctuations immediately spread out from the underworld fog, spreading in all directions. After a while, the 2 dark green lights disappeared into the gloomy and terrifying underworld fog. The powerful mental fluctuations also retreated like the tide. Then, the terrifying figure in the underworld fog rode the mysterious yin netherworld energy and disappeared into the mountain. Ji Yufei was very careful and prudent in the process of heading into the depths of the mountain. A purple flame appeared between his eyebrows, and the vast power of heaven and earth enveloped his body and sealed his aura. In this world filled with mysterious yin qi, Ji Yufei, who was exuberant with life energy, was like a bright lamp in the dark world, attracting countless undead creatures. In order to not attract some powerful undead creatures, Ji Yufei decisively used the power of heaven and earth to isolate his aura. This way, unless it was a terrifying undead emperor like the Bone Emperor, other undead creatures would definitely not be able to detect his existence. After walking for about an hour in the desolate mountains filled with yin qi and drifting underworld fog, Ji Yufei appeared in front of a strange mountain ridge. This mountain ridge was different from the others. It was completely snow-white, while the surrounding mountain peaks were dark brown. This mountain ridge was very conspicuous among the mountains. Ji Yufei was very surprised. He carefully approached the mountain ridge, and what surprised him was that the mountain ridge was actually made of jade-like rocks. At the peak of the mountain ridge, there was actually a building. A pitch-black palace stood on the mountain ridge. There was no light in the palace, and it was lifeless. This is actually a jade mountain. When Ji Yufei arrived at the bottom of the mountain ridge, he discovered that the rocks and sand of the mountain ridge were actually real jade and stone powder. Although Ji Yufei was surprised, he was not dumbfounded. This was not the first time he had seen a jade mountain completely made of jade. In the Northern Lands Pill Cauldron Gate, he had seen an immortal's cave built on top of a jade mountain. That jade mountain was brimming with spiritual energy and full of vitality. It was a treasured cultivation ground that all cultivators dreamed of. Below the Pill Cauldron Gate's Jade Mountain was a spiritual vein. It was a place where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth converged. With the Jade Mountain as the center, the area within a radius of several hundred kilometers became a rare paradise. However, although this Jade Mountain before him was much larger than the one in the northern land's Pill Cauldron Gate, there was not even a trace of life here, let alone spiritual energy. Jade could contain and nurture spiritual energy. In the world of cultivation, most magical techniques were related to jade. Jade talismans and jade slips were the most common items in the world of cultivation. Such a large jade mountain should be filled with spiritual energy and full of vitality. However, the entire Jade Mountain seemed to have lost all of its spiritual energy. The Jade Mountain had become ordinary jade, without a trace of spiritual energy. It was not hard to imagine that countless years ago, this mountain must have been a paradise. Moreover, this paradise was much larger than the northern land's Pill Cauldron's paradise. There must be a spiritual vein at the bottom of the Jade Mountain. Could it be that this spiritual vein has completely dried up, causing this spiritual land to become a dead land without any life? Ji Yufei thought to himself. He did not immediately ascend the mountain. Instead, he carefully observed his surroundings. He discovered that there were many ruins of buildings on the surrounding mountain peaks. Perhaps it was because too much time had passed, but those buildings had long since collapsed. Some had even turned into dust. None of the buildings could withstand the erosion of time. Only the palace at the top of the Jade Mountain remained standing. One could imagine that the palace was definitely extraordinary in its own way. Ji Yufei paced around the Jade Mountain for a while. He did not discover any traces of undead creatures in the vicinity. Therefore, he decided to ascend the mountain. He was very curious as to why the other buildings had long since collapsed, decayed, and even turned into dust. Yet, the palace on top of the Jade Mountain could still exist in this world. The Jade Mountain was thousands of feet high. However, to Ji Yufei, this distance was covered in the blink of an eye. He used the 8 desolate steps. Very quickly, he arrived in front of the palace. The palace was very big. It was like a small mountain towering in front of him. In the dusky sky, the palace did not appear holy and flawless. Instead, it was gloomy, like a ghost palace. The entire palace was made of black boulders. The door was wide open. It was pitch black inside. There was no sound at all. Nothing could be seen inside. The purple soul flame between Ji Yufei's eyebrows throbbed violently. His powerful divine sense spread out and enveloped the palace in front of him, capturing every movement in the space. Chapter 484. In the dusky heaven and earth, a pitch-black hall stood on top of a jade mountain that had lost all of its spiritual chi. It was like a prehistoric beast crouching on the peak of the mountain, causing Ji Yufei to feel a sense of oppression. Ji Yufei stood outside the ancient hall and released his powerful divine sense to probe ahead. His divine sense easily entered the ancient hall without any obstruction. He sensed everything inside, but there was no aura. It was as if the inside was an extremely empty space without the existence of any foreign objects. Ji Yufei was relieved, but he did not let his guard down because of this. He enveloped his body with the inner world force and his right hand flashed with a purple light. There was an extremely sharp sword chi surging in the palm of his hand and an ancient cauldron appeared in the palm of his left hand, exuding an endless ancient aura. If he encountered any danger, Ji Yufei would immediately take out the purple gold divine sword and the mountain and river cauldron. Although he didn't have the ability to use these two supreme treasures to unleash their legendary destructive power, he could still use them to protect himself. Even if he encountered an extremely powerful existence, as long as these two supreme treasures could block him for a while and buy him some time, he would be able to enter his inner world. At that time, unless a powerful existence as powerful as the human realm attacked Ji Yufei, no one would be able to do anything to Ji Yufei who was hiding in his inner world. Ji Yufei had only walked a dozen or so steps when he discovered that there was actually an extremely weak light flickering on the steps of the ancient palace, like a will-o-wisp. That's... Ji Yufei was taken aback. There were a lot of shattered bones scattered on the steps. They were sparkling like jade, and it was obvious that those shattered bones were God's bones. Only the bones of immortals and gods would be so extraordinary. Even though they had died for countless years, the bones were still crystal clear like jade and had not completely decayed. However, even the bones of gods could not withstand the erosion of time. The flowing splendor on the bones that were crystal clear like jade was almost extinguished. To all living things in the world, time was the greatest weapon that no one could avoid. Everything seemed to be unable to truly avoid being eroded by time. So what if they're godly bones? I believe that it won't be long before these godly bones that are scattered on the stairs will completely lose their divinity. In the end, they'll be completely worn away by time and vanish from this world. Ji Fei stopped in his tracks and carefully observed the shattered god's bones that flickered with a faint glow around him. He realized that none of the god's bones were intact. The largest god's bone was actually a phalanx. Why would these godly bones appear here? Divine bones covered the ground. What exactly happened here? Ji Fei frowned, feeling a little uneasy. However, apart from feeling uneasy, his curiosity was also ignited by the countless pieces of God's bones that appeared on the steps. This ancient hall definitely had secrets that no one knew about. Ji Fei continued forward on the God's bone. Catcher, catcher, catcher. A bone-chilling sound of bones rubbing against each other could be heard with every step that Ji Fei took. The sound was especially frightening in this spacious place. However, the steps were filled with God's bone fragments. There was no place for him to step on at all. Ji Fei could only step on the God's bone fragments and ascend step by step. Ji Fei walked very slowly. Although he was very curious about the ancient hall at the top of the Jade Mountain and the fact that the steps in front of the hall were paved with God's bones, he was not in a hurry. However, even though he was walking very slowly, he still reached the last step and arrived outside the ancient hall's wide-open door. The open door was like a gaping mouth that could devour any living thing that approached it at any time. It was pitch black behind the door. Even with Ji Fei's current cultivation, which allowed him to see through the night like it was day, he could only see some blurry scenery. Ji Fei stood outside the door and did not sense any dangerous aura from the ancient hall. He hesitated for a moment, but he still entered the ancient hall. There were no statues or Buddha statues in the huge hall. Moreover, most of the items in the hall had completely decayed. Even some of the items made of bronze were rusted and corroded to the point of being riddled with holes. They were almost completely decayed. Only a long table in the middle of the hall was still intact. There seemed to be some items on the table, but they had also turned into a pile of dust. Ji Fei lightly touched the long table, and with a peng sound, the long table turned into dust and scattered to the ground. It turned out that the long table had also decayed a long time ago. Clang! Suddenly, a crisp sound was heard in the spacious hall. The sudden sound was exceptionally bright in the silent hall. Ji Fei was startled because the sound came from the ground in front of him. It seemed that something on the long table had fallen to the ground. Ji Fei's heart skipped a beat. With a wave of his hand, the scattered dust on the ground was immediately blown away by a strong gust of wind. However, there was one item that was not blown away by the wind. It was a bronze bell that was covered in green copper. It was very inconspicuous. This bronze bell was only the size of half an adult's fist. If it was somewhere else, Ji Fei would not even look at this thing that looked like a piece of scrap metal. However, it was different now. In this hall, this small bronze bell was the only thing that was still intact. Everything else had long decayed. The endless years could erase everything. The decorations in the hall had all turned into dust, but only this bronze bell was preserved. This was extraordinary. This was different from the others. Ji Fei bent down to pick up this bronze bell. The bronze bell was very light, as if it was really just an ordinary decoration. Of course, in Ji Fei's eyes, this bronze bell was definitely not an ordinary object. It could withstand the corrosion of time. What else was there to doubt? Ji Fei carefully looked at this bronze bell. He wiped away the green copper and saw that there was a simple and unadorned pattern on the bronze bell. What surprised Ji Fei was that there were many Buddha statues on it. This thing seemed to be a Buddhist magic tool. However, Ji Yufei could not feel a trace of Buddhist aura from this bronze bell. The spirit energy of this magic tool seemed to have been completely drained. It had become a piece of scrap metal. At this time, a gust of cold wind suddenly blew in from outside the hall, stirring up the dust on the ground. The entire hall was completely plunged into darkness. A figure suddenly appeared at the entrance of the hall, and a terrifying evil aura spread out from the figure. What's that? Ji Yufei was taken aback. He didn't even notice that a demonic being had gotten close to him. There was only one possibility, and that was that this demonic being was stronger than him. Are you the one who killed the two fellows from the undead clan? A powerful soul fluctuation spread from the figure at the entrance. This. Ji Yufei's expression changed instantly. After he killed the five-colored skeleton and the purple-golden skeleton, he sealed his aura with the internal world energy and entered the depths of the mountain. He was shocked that this guy could still catch up with him. Legend has it that the sacred clan living in the depths of this world are the descendants of the supreme experts. Their blood can cleanse the soul, purify the death chi, and regenerate the flesh and blood of the undead. Such a soul fluctuation came from in front of him. I don't know what you are talking about. Ji Yufei had no idea what the sacred tribe was or what a supreme powerhouse was. However, there was one thing he was sure of: this evil fellow was definitely not a good person. Are you going to follow me obediently, or do you want me to take action? The black fog spread out from the hazy figure and surrounded him. In the endless darkness, only two blood-red lights could be seen, staring coldly at Ji Yufei. Those evil and terrifying eyes did not have a trace of human emotion. They were the eyes of death from hell, emitting a heart-palpitating death aura. Ji Yufei suddenly smiled and said to that person, "Is there a second choice? Although I don't know how you killed the two experts from the undead clan, I advise you not to play tricks in front of me." That person seemed very conceited and did not take Ji Yufei seriously at all. The black fog was surging and surging. Ji Yufei could sense a strong pressure and an extremely dangerous aura from that person. His spiritual sense could not detect the depth of the person in the black fog. He could only see a pair of blood-red eyes looking at him coldly through the black fog. Ji Yufei could not sense any life fluctuations from the other party. The person shrouded in the black fog seemed to be an ice-cold corpse. Who are you? Ji Yufei could not help but be shocked. The other party's strength seemed to be far above that of the five-colored skeleton and the purple-gold skeleton that he had killed. Sigh. That person did not answer and only sighed. It was this sigh that made Ji Yufei's hair stand on end. This was because this sigh reverberated in the spacious and empty hall. This was a sound, not a spiritual fluctuation. In other words, the person in the black fog was not an undead creature, nor a ferocious ghost or evil spirit. It was a real existence with flesh and blood. Ji Yufei could already guess the origin of this person. Only such an existence could make a sound and use it to communicate. Undead creatures and ferocious ghosts did not have the ability to speak. This person should be from the territory ruled by the Corpse Emperor, or even a subordinate of the Corpse Emperor. Swish. The person in the black fog moved. He directly rushed in from the door. A skinny purple-black palm stretched out from the black fog and directly grabbed at Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei glanced at it and was even more shocked. That was not the skin color of a normal creature. The arm was surrounded by the aura of death, like a terrifying ghost claw. He no longer had any doubt that the one attacking him was really a terrifying evil corpse, an evil corpse from hell. The other party's attack came too quickly and without any warning. Even though Ji Yufei was already prepared, he was still caught off guard by the other party's attack. Without any hesitation, he raised his right hand and threw a punch forward to block the attack. Clang! The sound of metal colliding resounded. The ghost claw quickly retracted, but Ji Yufei was hit by a strong force, causing him to lose his balance and retreat again and again. What's in your hand? A violent spiritual fluctuation came from the front. The person shrouded in the black fog was actually somewhat afraid. Chapter 485. Dang! Ji Yufei subconsciously flicked the bronze bell in his hand. A melodious bell sound immediately resounded in the dark and gloomy hall. The melodious bell sound was not very loud, but within the bell sound, there seemed to be tens of thousands of Buddhas chanting Buddhist scriptures. Gu Fei only felt that besides the bell sound, there was also a peaceful Sanskrit sound lingering in his ears. Gu Fei's state of mind unexpectedly calmed down under the sound of the bell sound. His face also became serene, as if he had forgotten that he was in a dangerous place, facing a terrifying evil corpse. The sound of the bell seemed to be able to cleanse one's soul, causing Gu Fei's divine soul to be in a peaceful state. It was as if it had left his body and floated out of his body. In this tranquility and serenity, he felt a sense of drowsiness. In this tranquil and serene bell sound, there was actually a hidden murderous intent. Just as his consciousness was about to fall into the boundless darkness, Gu Fei suddenly woke up. His eyes immediately emitted a divine light that was as bright as the stars. Two rays of light suddenly lit up the hall that was filled with dark energy and dark fog, illuminating the entire hall in an instant. The flame-shaped soul brand that had already hidden in the space between his eyebrows once again emerged, emitting a powerful divine sense. Roar. At this time, a furious roar resounded above the hall. A terrifying wave of energy spread out above the hall, causing the entire ancient hall to shake. In the midst of the surging dark fog, there was a frightening aura that caused one's heart to palpitate. A tall figure faintly appeared in the dark fog. Two blood-red eyes pierced through the dark fog and swept towards Gu Fei. "Damn brat, don't make any more useless resistance." A cold voice came out from the dark fog. The evil corpse seemed to be a little afraid of the bronze bell in Gu Fei's hand. In fact, Gu Fei was also secretly shocked. His body unconsciously broke out in a cold sweat. The Buddhist tool in his hand was definitely not simple. The bell sound it emitted could shake the divine soul and cleanse it. Just now, if Gu Fei had not suddenly awakened at the critical moment, his divine sense might have fallen into the boundless darkness forever and become a walking corpse. The sound of the copper bell could actually directly attack the soul. This truly shocked Gu Fei. How could a Buddhist Dharma artifact have such a powerful offensive power? It was a little against the compassion of Buddhism. Clang. Gu Fei didn't care about the evil corpse hidden in the dark mist. He reached out his hand and flicked the bronze bell again. This time, he was prepared. The melodious sound of the bell rang out again, and there seemed to be endless Sanskrit sounds lingering between heaven and earth. A circle of ripples visible to the naked eye could be seen with the bronze bell as the center, spreading out in all directions like water waves. Even though he had prepared for this, Gu Fei still felt his soul trembling. The soul flame between his eyebrows was fiercely throbbing, flickering with a powerful spirit wave. It was like a purple divine flame throbbing. And the dark mist in the main hall, under the sound of the bell, unexpectedly showed signs of dissipating. The evil corpse roared again and again in the dark mist, and the death energy surged up violently. The supernatural power of Buddhism was the nemesis of all evil spirits. It was obvious that this Buddhist Dharma artifact could restrain the evil corpse in the dark mist. But unfortunately, Gu Fei was unable to truly activate the copper bell and make it display the power it should have. The small copper bell unexpectedly emitted a sound like that of a giant bell. This caused the evil corpse in the dark mist to have some misgivings, and it didn't directly attack Gu Fei. "Boy, quickly throw away that thing in your hand and come with me. Otherwise, I don't care whether you are a member of the legendary sacred clan or not, I will directly kill you." The evil corpse's gloomy and frightening words came out from the dark mist. Above the main hall, the death energy was vast and mighty, and the dark mist was tumbling. There seemed to be countless evil spirits and malicious ghosts faintly appearing in the dark mist. A terrifying pressure filled the entire main hall. Gu Fei had a feeling that he was standing on the legendary Sen Luo temple, and that he was facing a terrifying king of hell. The powerful pressure caused the void around Gu Fei's body to seemingly solidify. A powerful force surged towards him from all directions. He tried to raise his right hand, but found it extremely difficult. It was as if his hand was pressed down by a huge mountain. Although he could move it, it was extremely strenuous. That evil corpse was extremely powerful. It was countless times more powerful than the undead clan's 5-colored skeleton and purple gold skeleton. Ji Fei felt a sense of helplessness. In front of this evil corpse, Ji Fei knew that he had no chance of winning. Unless he caught it off guard, he could use the purple-gold divine sword that was fused into his right hand to kill it in one blow. However, this chance was extremely small, almost impossible. The entire ancient hall had already been enveloped by the evil corpse's powerful soul power. Every move of Ji Fei's was under the enemy's control. The power surging from all directions was still increasing. It was as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. Ji Fei's entire body emitted a slight explosive sound. That evil corpse emitted an incomparably powerful and evil aura. It actually wanted to directly imprison Ji Fei, and it almost succeeded. Ji Fei could no longer move his body normally. That evil corpse wasn't lying. It definitely had the powerful strength to kill Ji Fei in an instant. It had complete control over everything, including Ji Fei's life and death. "You are stronger than me. I have nothing to say." Ji Fei seemed to have lost all hope. He actually threw the bronze bell in his hand to the ground with a clang. The vast and terrifying power emitted from the evil corpse seemed to be unable to imprison the bronze bell. The void around Ji Fei's body was almost solidified. However, the bronze bell was still unaffected. It directly fell from Ji Fei's hand to the ground. The unremarkable bronze bell was only the size of half an adult's fist. However, it was definitely a precious treasure. The evil corpse's demonic power had no effect on this bronze bell. Very good. This way, you will suffer less pain. The evil corpse directly walked out of the dark fog. It had already controlled everything. It could approach Ji Fei without any scruples. In front of it, Ji Fei was like an ant. As long as it moved its finger, it could pinch him to death at any time. This was the first time that Ji Fei saw the true appearance of this evil creature. When he saw the true appearance of this terrifying evil creature, all the pores on his body opened up. This evil corpse was simply a human-shaped skeleton. It was like a skeleton wearing a piece of human skin. The clothes on its body were tattered. Its flesh and blood were dried up and stuck to the bones. The skin that was exposed outside of the clothes was purplish-black. When Ji Fei saw this demonic corpse, this term appeared in his mind. That's right, this is a walking corpse. Its blood-red eyes had no pupils. They were like two blood-red agates that were full of evil aura. There was no trace of life in those blood-red eyes. This evil corpse seemed to be very confident. It didn't seem to be worried that Ji Fei would plot against it. It directly walked towards Ji Fei. Of course, its confidence came from its incomparably powerful strength. The evil corpse's withered body was about 8 or 9 feet tall. Its grey, rag-like clothes hung on its body. Some parts of the clothes had already rotted. This evil corpse's skeleton was very tall. One could imagine that before this evil corpse became an evil creature, it was definitely a burly man. Within its bony body, there was a vast, ocean-like death energy surging. It emitted a powerful and evil aura that made one's heart palpitate. It gave off a strong sense of oppression. Even if this evil corpse's strength couldn't compare to a demigod's, it wasn't much weaker. Ji Fei was in a desperate situation. However, the other party didn't have any intention of killing him immediately. It could be said that although Ji Fei was very unlucky to encounter this terrifying evil corpse, his life was temporarily not in danger. This evil corpse also thought that Ji Fei was a sacred race member that had come out from the depths of this world. Therefore, this evil corpse wanted to capture Ji Fei alive. It wanted to obtain the sacred race's sacred blood. The sacred race's sacred blood was a holy item that all the evil spirits, undying skeletons, and evil corpses that were born from the dead in this world yearned for even in their dreams. Legend has it that only the sacred race's blood essence that lived in the depths of this world could give these evil spirits, and wandering ghosts a true new life. The terrifying evil corpse directly walked in front of Ji Fei and directly reached out to grab Ji Fei. Its withered fingers were thin and long, and the jet-black claws at its fingertips were like 5 incomparably sharp little swords. They flickered with a gloomy black light, causing one's heart to tremble. Ji Fei was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. In front of this powerful evil corpse, he didn't even have the strength to fight back. Just now, when he had clashed with the evil corpse, it seemed that the other party was only testing him and hadn't revealed its true strength. When this evil corpse revealed its true strength, Ji Yufei couldn't even take one blow from it. Ji Yufei definitely wouldn't sit and wait for death. He was waiting for an opportunity to kill this terrifying evil corpse. An endless amount of heaven and earth energy gathered in his Niwen palace. Using his divine sense as a guide, Ji Yufei gathered the heaven and earth energy in his inner body. He wanted to give this evil corpse a fatal blow. He calmly looked at the evil corpse in front of him. The instant the evil corpse's ghostly hand touched his clothes, Ji Yufei smiled. The evil corpse couldn't help but be startled when it saw that Ji Yufei could still smile at this moment. At this moment, the purple soul fire between Ji Yufei's eyebrows suddenly emitted a dazzling brilliance. It was as if a purple sun had suddenly rushed out from between Ji Yufei's eyebrows, and a blazing purple divine light shone in all directions. Swoosh! A purple divine light shot out from the soul fire and pierced towards the evil corpse's head. Ji Yufei had been waiting for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The powerful force that had been brewing in his Niwen palace for a long time, the heaven and earth energy and divine sense had completely erupted at this moment. Chapter 486. Just as the evil corpse's skinny ghostly hand touched Ji Yufei's clothes, a dazzling purple divine light suddenly appeared between Ji Yufei's eyebrows, like a purple sun. His mud-pill palace trembled, and a dazzling beam of light shot out from between Ji Yufei's eyebrows like a destructive divine light. It turned into a purple divine weapon and tore through the void. This was a terrifying attack formed by the fusion of a powerful divine sense and the power of the inner world. The inner world in the Mudpill Palace's chaotic sea was Ji Yufei's second source of power. The power of the inner world was no weaker than the power contained in his body. Moreover, Ji Yufei's divine sense had reached an unbelievable level. It was incomparably condensed and could take shape. When these two kinds of power fused together, it displayed a great power. Wherever the purple divine light passed, the void collapsed, directly breaking the evil corpse's powerful imprisonment power. Poof! The purple divine light crushed half of the evil corpse's head in an instant, sending it flying backwards. Ji Yufei immediately felt his entire body relax, and the powerful pressure that enveloped him immediately disappeared. At such a close distance, even if that terrifying demonic corpse possessed frightening strength, it would still be difficult for it to dodge. Ji Yufei used the 8 desolate steps, displaying the extreme speed of 8 steps. With a speed that the naked eye could not follow, he rushed forward. With just one step, he caught up with the evil corpse that was flying backwards. Buzz! Without any hesitation, Ji Yufei directly took out the purple gold divine sword that he had fused into his right hand. An unparalleled sword chi immediately surged out from his hand, and the surrounding temperature immediately dropped. The long sword vibrated, and at the same time, the sharp blade rapidly cut through the void. However, it also made a slight sound, as if it was cutting through a piece of cloth. Poof! A purple lightning flashed, and the cold sword chi scattered the heavy fog and death chi, cutting off the evil corpse's head. Ji Yufei's series of actions were completed in an instant. It was clean and neat, and could be said to be perfect. He successfully gave this arrogant evil corpse a fatal blow. Roar! A strong spiritual fluctuation came from the half-head of the evil corpse that had rolled to the corner of the hall. The eye on the half-head emitted a fierce and angry light, like a blood-red gem shining. Within the broken head, there was a dazzling bloody light flickering. Powerful spiritual fluctuations were coming from that bloody light. That was where the evil corpse's soul was located. I'll tear you apart. Half of the evil corpse's head emitted a fierce spiritual fluctuation. Its anger was about to burn the 9 heavens. It had actually been plotted against by an ant and even injured by this ant. This was simply an extraordinary humiliation. At this moment, it wished for nothing more than to tear Ji Yufei into pieces. At the same time, a ball of demonic bloody light rushed out from the half-head and enveloped the headless corpse that had fallen nearby. Then, the headless corpse actually moved. Not only did it move, it even stood up from the ground. This caused Ji Yufei's hair to stand on end. This evil corpse actually wanted to use its powerful soul power to control its own body. However, what made Ji Yufei feel slightly relieved was that the evil corpse's spiritual fluctuations had already weakened by more than half. It was no longer as frightening and terrifying as it was before. Ji Yufei sneered. At this moment, the purple-gold divine sword that had been smelted into his right hand had already completely condensed in his hand. He took a large step forward and directly waved the divine sword towards the headless evil corpse that had just stood up from the ground. The divine sword's edge was like a purple cold lightning that cut through the void, emitting a vast and mighty cold sword chi. Shua. The headless evil corpse that was enveloped by the bloody light was instantly split into two halves, flying to both sides. The bloody light that enveloped the headless evil corpse was also dispersed by the sword chi. Ji Yufei did not inject Yuan Qi into the divine sword to activate its power. Instead, he directly used the divine sword's sharpness to split the evil corpse into two halves. The purple-gold divine sword was indestructible. Even if he did not activate the divine sword's power and used it like an ordinary weapon, there were most likely not many things in this world that could withstand its blade. The evil corpse's half-head roared. Under the shroud of the bloody evil light, the half-head actually rose from the ground and flew into the sky. Go and die. A powerful spiritual fluctuation surged out from the half-head. The evil corpse was about to go crazy. With a shua sound, a resplendent bloody light shot out from its eye, piercing towards Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei directly waved the divine sword in his hand and directly cut off the bloody light. Then, with a kai sound, the divine sword's tip turned into a purple cold star and directly pierced towards the half-head in the sky. Reckless. That half of the evil corpse's head emitted such a soul fluctuation. Then, endless nether fog gathered from all directions, completely shrouding that half of the evil corpse's head. Ji Yufei's sword pierced into the yin qi and underworld fog. The vast and cold sword qi on the sword directly dispersed the surrounding yin qi and underworld fog. However, the evil corpse's half-head had already disappeared without a trace. At this moment, Ji Yufei suddenly felt three powerful and terrifying auras suddenly appear in the surging underworld fog. This. Ji Yufei was shocked. He seemed to have been surrounded by three experts in an instant and had fallen into a dangerous situation. How could there be three evil corpses? Could it be that this evil corpse also had a doppelganger technique? Feeling the terrifying auras of death coming from three directions, Ji Yufei could not help but feel his scalp go numb. You destroyed my body. Even if you are of the sacred race, you still have to die. The evil corpse's spiritual fluctuation surged from all directions. A terrifying power was brewing and condensing, causing the entire hall to start shaking. Ji Yufei was unable to determine the exact location of the evil corpse. However, he was sure that the evil corpse had suffered unimaginable damage and its strength had sharply declined. Want to kill me? You might have had that strength earlier, but now, Ji Yufei sneered. At this time, he had already understood that the three auras that surrounded him were actually from the evil corpse. The evil corpse's body had already been split into three parts. In other words, this evil corpse was using its soul power to control the three parts of its body. This evil corpse was indeed amazing. If an ordinary undead creature suffered such a fatal attack, even if it didn't die, it would still be half dead. How could it still have the strength to fight? Not only did this evil corpse still have the strength to fight, but from the powerful and evil aura that it emitted, it still had unparalleled battle strength. Death domain. The evil corpse's hair-raising spiritual fluctuation came from within the surging underworld fog. Then, the void trembled. The black fog that enveloped Ji Yufei's body surged violently and unexpectedly condensed into a black vortex. It was like an ancient evil beast had opened its huge mouth and swallowed Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei only felt his vision go black and the world spin. An extremely powerful force suddenly appeared in the void and in an instant, he was pulled into an absolutely dark void. Chapter 487. In the dusky world, in the depths of the mountains, at the summit of the Jade Mountain, the death chi soared to the sky. Rolling black clouds shrouded the entire world, and a terrifying death chi surged out from the summit like a raging wave in all directions, sweeping through the mountains. The ancient palace at the summit of the Jade Mountain had been completely enveloped by the surging black chi. The ancient palace was shaking, and the sound of bricks and tiles colliding and rubbing against each other could be heard. It seemed as if it would collapse at any time. A terrifying roar came from the main hall, and an extremely powerful evil force was surging in the main hall. That evil corpse had truly gone mad. It displayed its terrifying battle prowess and unleashed a terrifying death domain, turning this part of the void into a land of death, a land of death. It was an area of absolute darkness, filled with a vast and mighty death chi. It was a dreadful domain where the death chi was everywhere. Ji Fei, who was in the death domain, felt that his life force was rapidly fading away. There was an unfathomable power in this void, and it was actually forcefully extracting the life essence from his body, obliterating his life force. Ji Fei sucked in a breath of cold air. His muscles and bones shook, and a powerful yuan qi surged out from his flesh and blood. A dazzling qi penetrated his body, forming a layer of invulnerable gang qi outside his body. He wanted to seal off his life force that was fading away. However, he was surprised to find that his life essence was still rapidly fading away. The gang qi outside his body simply could not block the loss of his life force. Even the mighty Jin Yuan that was surging out from his body was dissipating in the void. The gang qi outside his body was also gradually dimming, showing signs of dispersing. Ji Fei felt the threat of death. If this continued, in less than half an hour, his life force would be completely consumed by this evil void, and he would die. Even if he was a martial artist, and his qi and blood were as vigorous as a flood dragon, and his life force was strong enough to be comparable to the 9-life divine cat, he still could not withstand such torment. The death domain was truly worthy of its name. It could obliterate anything that had life. Rays of brilliance floated out from Ji Fei's body and then dissipated in the void. This was the incomparably pure life qi, and his skin had begun to lose its luster. Roar. Ji Fei let out a low roar and raised his left hand. A powerful wave of energy immediately surged out from his hand, like an aura from a primitive world, and immediately pervaded the terrifying and evil void. A fist-sized ancient cauldron rushed out from Ji Fei's hand. He had no choice but to use the mountain and river cauldron. Boom! With a huge tremor, the fist-sized mountain and river cauldron rapidly grew in size. A terrifying aura suddenly erupted from the cauldron like a volcano, and the entire void immediately shook violently. The ancient cauldron floated above Ji Fei's head. Primordial chaos qi poured down from the ancient cauldron and enveloped him, isolating him from the strange power of the death void. The mountain and river cauldron's primordial chaos was the ancestral qi of all things in the world. It could be said that all kinds of power and spiritual qi in the world were formed from the ancestral qi of all things. Therefore, the primordial chaos was the nemesis of all kinds of power. The death domain was also a kind of power in the world. The primordial chaos could prevent the death domain's strange power from eroding Ji Fei's life force. Break. Ji Fei let out a loud roar, and the yuan qi in his body surged into the ancient cauldron. Hum. With a bang, the mountain and river cauldron shook violently. Countless spatial cracks immediately appeared in the space. Then, like a porcelain that was filled with cracks, it shattered in an instant. How could this be? The void collapsed, and a spiritual wave of fear and despair immediately spread out. It was captured by Ji Fei. With the mountain and river cauldron as the center, a spatial wave that could be seen with the naked eye spread out in all directions. It was like a transparent wave surging outwards. Everywhere it passed, the void collapsed, and the heaven and earth collapsed, turning into a terrifying destructive storm. The terrifying power that spread out from the mountain and river cauldron seemed to be able to destroy everything. The death domain of the evil corpse was instantly broken, and the endless death qi melted like ice and was instantly destroyed by the spreading destructive storm. Even the ancient palace that had stood at the peak of the Jade Mountain for God knows how many years also exploded in an instant. Dust rose into the sky, and a circle of qi surged out from the mountain peak, covering a radius of a few miles. Countless broken bricks and tiles flew in all directions. Although the mountain and river cauldron did not display its terrifying power that could suppress the mountains and rivers, with just a shake, not only did the ancient palace collapse, but even the entire Jade Mountain was shaken. In an instant, the depths of the mountain shook, and the death chi was vast and mighty. It was as terrifying as the end of the world. An ancient cauldron that was the size of a small mountain floated on the peak of the Jade Mountain, releasing layers of dark chi and underworld fog. A vast and desolate aura spread out from the ancient cauldron. Jiyu Fei, who was enveloped by the chaotic primordial chaos chi from the mountain and river cauldron, turned pale. The mountain and river cauldron only shook a little, but in an instant, it had sucked away nearly 1/3 of his yuan chi, making him feel that he could not bear it. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 balls of bloody light shot up into the sky under the cover of the underworld fog, trying to escape. Jiyu Fei sneered, clenched his teeth, and activated the mountain and river cauldron again. The mountain and river cauldron that was floating on the mountain peak suddenly emitted a bright divine light. Boom! The mouth of the cauldron seemed to have become a bottomless black hole that could swallow the heaven and earth, and a terrifying power that could swallow the heaven and earth surged out. Rumble! The void above the Jade Mountain shook, and the mountain and river cauldron displayed its terrifying power. Endless yin chi and underworld fog gathered towards the mountain and river cauldron like 100 rivers converging, as if it wanted to swallow the heaven and earth into the cauldron. An enormous suction force enveloped the heaven and earth, and the 3 balls of bloody light that shot up into the sky were actually pulled back by the terrifying suction force from the mouth of the mountain and river cauldron. The underworld fog dispersed, and under the shroud of the bloody light, half of the evil corpse's head and the 2 pieces of its body appeared. The evil corpse was screaming in fear, and a horrified spiritual fluctuation was constantly emitted from the half of its head. However, at this time, no matter how much the evil corpse struggled, it could not escape from the enormous suction force from the mouth of the mountain and river cauldron. The evil corpse was desperately activating the death energy, but in the end, it was still swallowed by the mountain and river cauldron in despair. Rumble! The mountain and river cauldron fell from the sky, and it quickly shrank before falling into Jiyu Fei's hand. Inside the cauldron, a ball of bloody light was moving left and right, but it could not rush out of the cauldron. The shaking Jade Mountain began to calm down, and the desolate aura that caused the hearts of all living beings to palpitate also retreated like a tide. That ball of bloody light was the essence of the evil corpse's power. Jiyu Fei did not activate the mountain and river cauldron to directly refine it. Inside the mountain and river cauldron, besides that ball of bloody light, there were more than 10 powerful soul fires imprisoned inside. Jiyu Fei needed soul energy. Soul energy was more useful than any elixir. It could nourish and strengthen the soul, and it could also cleanse the body, transforming the soul and the body to a perfect state. It was different from martial cultivators. The body of martial cultivators was just a cauldron used to refine essence, chi, and spirit. For Jiyu Fei, the body was the source of power. Supreme warriors could cultivate to the point where their bodies were immortal and indestructible. However, if their souls were destroyed, then even if they had an indestructible body, they would still die, leaving behind only a shell. Therefore, not only did Jiyu Fei pursue an indestructible body, but he also pursued an indestructible soul. As long as the soul was not destroyed, life would never end. Jiyu Fei kept the mountain and river cauldron in his left hand, and then left the Jade Mountain. Not long after Jiyu Fei left, a few powerful divine wills came from the depths of the mountain. Some terrifying experts were alarmed, and they released their divine wills to investigate. Very soon, the divine wills retreated, and the experts in the depths of the mountain did not appear. In the Hell Path, a world of death, battles never stopped. Even those powerful existences would often fight, so there was nothing strange about this. The evil spirits, evil corpses, and demonic ghosts in the Hell Path were not kind. Even if they were kind, they could not be. This was because the Hell Path was a world of death without any order. Devouring other people's power to strengthen oneself was the law of survival in this world. A weak undead creature could devour the soul fire of other weaker undead creatures to increase its own power. Killing each other, in the eyes of the creatures in this world, was actually a necessary path to growth. Either they killed their opponents, or they were killed by their opponents. Ji Fei left the Jade Mountain. He did not want to be targeted by other powerful evil creatures and yin spirits, so he continued to use the inner world energy to suppress his aura. He did not understand how the evil corpse could still track him, even though he had already used the inner world energy to suppress his aura. The evil spirits, demonic ghosts, and yin spirits in this world were all evil creatures without life. As long as their souls were not destroyed, they could live in this hell that was shrouded in yin energy and could not see the light of day. If they went out to the outside world and were hit by the yang energy, their souls would scatter, and they would completely disappear from this world. Of course, if they were strong enough, like Ghost Emperor Fengju, they would not feel any discomfort even if they were exposed to the sunlight. Soul. Could it be because of the soul? Ji Fei vaguely thought of something. The world energy could isolate the aura, but it could not completely isolate the spiritual fluctuations. Moreover, Ji Fei had to release his divine sense to pay attention to any movement in the surroundings. Could it be that the evil corpse had followed the residual spiritual fluctuations in the void to track him? Ji Fei thought, this kind of evil creature that was born from the dead, wasn't it best at soul techniques? Ji Fei did not dare to be careless. Thinking of this, he completely withdrew his divine sense into his Niwen palace. The flickering purple flame between his eyebrows also immediately disappeared under his skin. He did not walk out of the mountain. After he left the Jade Mountain, he opened up a cave on a cliff and used a huge rock to block the entrance. There were many caves on this cliff. Ji Fei carefully examined these caves, but there were no powerful undead creatures in them. Chapter 488. In the legendary hell, the world was dusky. There was no sun or moon. Dark mist drifted between heaven and earth. It was the coldest yin qi, and the earth only had two colors, dark brown and red. It was like dried blood and fresh blood. Hell seemed to be a world that had been soaked in fresh blood. It was a paradise for countless evil spirits and ferocious creatures. In the periphery of the Hell Dao, in the territory ruled by the Bone Emperor, there was a mountain that even the undead creatures were unwilling to set foot in. There seemed to be many secrets in the mountain, and there were many ancient ruins. For some reason, the undead creatures rarely appeared in this mountain. Perhaps, there was a terrifying existence in the depths of the mountain that the undead creatures were afraid of. On a cliff in this mountain, there were caves of various sizes. Some were very shallow and could be seen at a glance, while some were so deep that the bottom could not be seen. It was pitch black like a bottomless abyss. In an inconspicuous position on this cliff, there was a cave blocked by a huge rock. In the cave, a white-robed youth sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him floated an ancient cauldron that was several feet tall. There was no glaring divine light or vast divine power fluctuation. The ancient cauldron floating in the air did not have anything eye-catching. It was simple and unadorned. On the body of the cauldron, there were patterns of flowers, birds, fish, insects, birds, and beasts. There was also a layer of hazy, indistinguishable gas on the body of the cauldron. The gas that seemed like primal chaos emitted an endless ancient aura. That aura seemed to come from a primitive world. Although it was also inconspicuous, it made one's heart palpitate. The cave was a small cave that Ji Fei had temporarily opened up. The ancient cauldron floating in front of him was, of course, the Extreme Dao Precious Mountain River Cauldron. The Mountain River Cauldron could suppress the mountains and rivers of the earth. It was even heavier than the primordial divine mountain. If the cauldron's soul had not recognized Ji Fei as its master, it would have been impossible for Ji Fei to move the Mountain River Cauldron. Swoosh! The soul fire on Ji Fei's forehead that was connected to the Niwen Palace appeared under his skin. It flickered with dazzling divine light, and a divine splendor spread out from between his eyebrows like water waves. Then, the space shook. His figure, along with the cauldron of mountain and river, disappeared from the cave in an instant. He entered his own inner world from the outside world. Opening the inner world was no longer a difficult task for the current Ji Fei. With his current cultivation, he could open the inner world at will. When Ji Fei's inner world was refining the mountain and river cauldron, the cauldron's original cauldron soul had almost turned him into a chaos embryo. At that time, heaven and earth shattered, and the void turned into nothingness and chaos, causing Jiu Fei's inner world to almost collapse. Fortunately, Jiu Fei had merged his body with the Tao at the critical moment and temporarily fused with the great Tao brand within his body, allowing him to possess the great divine ability to change the world. Not only had he destroyed the original cauldron soul of the mountain and river cauldron, but he had also forged a new cauldron soul. Not only had he refined the mountain and river cauldron, but his inner world had also expanded by nearly 10 miles. Jiu Fei's inner world had already begun to take the shape of mountains and lakes. However, there wasn't much greenery in this part of the world, it was very desolate. When his inner world collapsed, the spiritual plants planted by Jiu Fei in his inner world also couldn't escape misfortune. More than half of them were destroyed. However, fortunately, the 9-leaf longevity grass and the 9-leaf mysterious ginseng that Jiu Fei obtained in the virtual sky world weren't destroyed. The 9-leaf longevity grass and the 9-leaf mysterious ginseng were both rare spiritual plants of heaven and earth. They were extinct in the outside world and could only grow in the virtual sky world. Jiu Fei knew very well how precious these two kinds of spiritual plants were. In a critical moment, these two kinds of spiritual plants were enough to save his life. Jiu Fei's figure appeared in his inner world as if he had walked out of the void. He sat cross-legged on the sand and waved his hands. A wave of primordial chi surged out from his hands and entered the mountain and river cauldron in front of him. Buzz! The mountain and river cauldron trembled slightly and then slowly rotated. The primordial aura of primordial chaos permeated from the cauldron, making the ancient cauldron seem to be in the primordial void. Soon, the ancient cauldron floating in front of Jiu Fei began to emit the sound of wind and thunder. The mountain and river cauldron was operating, refining the soul fire and the bloody light of the evil corpse imprisoned in the cauldron. Rumble! The strange sounds coming from the mountain and river cauldron gradually became louder. Sometimes, it was like the sound of thunder coming from the 9th heaven, shaking people's souls. Sometimes, it was like the raging tide of the sea, making people feel as if they were standing in the middle of a stormy sea. The misty primordial chaos aura completely isolated everything. Even if he could use the mountain and river cauldron, his divine sense couldn't penetrate this layer of primordial chaos aura. He couldn't sense what was happening in the mountain and river cauldron, but the strange sounds coming from the cauldron made Jiu Fei feel as if the cauldron was opening up the world and evolving into primordial chaos. The strange sounds in the cauldron didn't last long before it gradually calmed down. Then, strands of divine light began to float out from the mouth of the cauldron and entered Jiu Fei's body. Soon, Jiu Fei's body was enveloped by a layer of destructive divine light. The divine light was filled with life energy, constantly seeping into Jiu Fei's body through Jiu Fei's pores, making Jiu Fei look like an immortal god wearing a divine light robe, incomparably sacred and inviolable. The enormous soul power was refined into pure life energy by the mountain and river cauldron. When the life energy entered his body, Jiu Fei's muscles, bones, and flesh were all bathed in the divine light of life. The vast life energy surged in Jiu Fei's body, seeping into every corner of his body. The enormous energy was constantly being refined into his flesh, bones, and organs. Jiu Fei's muscles, bones, and internal organs became crystal clear. The life energy from the mountain and river cauldron was like a trickle, rippling into his flesh, internal organs, and bones. His body gradually blossomed with a dazzling brilliance. 5-colored energy began to overflow from his body, making his body sparkling like a 5-colored divine jade. The vigorous life energy pervaded the air, causing the life energy within a radius of dozens of feet around his body to be vast and mighty. Green grass sprouted on the sandy ground near his body. The green grass grew rapidly. Eventually, a flourishing grassland appeared around Jiu Fei's body. His figure was also covered by the crazily growing green grass. The soul fires of more than 10 powerful undead creatures and the bloody energy of the evil corpse were constantly being refined by the mountain and river cauldron. Among the soul fires of the undead creatures, there was also the powerful soul fire of the purple gold skeleton, which had surpassed the undead king. After refining these energies, the life energy generated was simply tremendous to the extreme. It was like reading a book. The life energy unceasingly gushed out from the mountain and river cauldron. Time flew by. Jiyu Fei, who was sitting cross-legged in the grassland, seemed to have turned into a stone statue, motionless. The mountain and river cauldron was revolving automatically in the void in front of him. 3 days and 3 nights had passed. The mountain and river cauldron emitted an even more dazzling divine light. That divine light completely submerged into Jiyu Fei's body. He could feel that the energy capacity of his flesh, bones, and internal organs had gradually reached the limit. The life energy was boiling, rolling, and surging like the ocean waves. Jiyu Fei's internal organs were sparkling with divine light, flawless and without any impurities. His bones were even more dazzling, condensing an endless amount of energy. His skin was overflowing with colorful lights, incomparably dazzling. It didn't look like a body of flesh and blood at all, but more like a 5-colored divine iron cast. Flawless and without any impurities, like a crystal-clear divine weapon. He felt that he had become much stronger. The life energy tempered his body again and again, as if it was forging a peerless divine weapon, causing his flesh, internal organs, and bones to become unbelievably tough. After a month, Jiyu Fei had to wake up from his meditation. He wanted to stop the Xian Qi in his body, because he felt that the energy his body could hold was almost reaching the limit. If he didn't make a breakthrough in his cultivation, even if his body was strong enough to fight against divine weapons and spirit treasures, there was still the danger of his body exploding from the endless energy. At this time, the life energy emitted from the mountain and river cauldron began to gradually weaken. However, what made Jiyu Fei surprised was that he actually couldn't stop. The Xian Qi was still operating in his body, and the life energy from the mountain and river cauldron was still gushing into his body. Raw. How can this be? Jiyu Fei couldn't help but panic. Things seemed to be out of his control. His heart was filled with confusion. He actually couldn't guide the life energy. As time passed, every inch of Jiyu Fei's flesh and blood was being baptized, gradually nourishing his body. His physique continued to improve, and his body became stronger. However, Jiyu Fei felt that his body seemed to swell up. His flesh and bones were trembling, and from head to toe, there was a pain as if his muscles were being torn apart. Just as Jiyu Fei was in a state of shock, suddenly, the rapidly expanding life energy in his body began to flow towards his dantian. From all directions, it gathered into his dantian. Divine light shone brightly, and it actually gathered into a 5-colored lake in his dantian. At this moment, Jiyu Fei felt that the energy that had been expanding in his body had suddenly found a vent. In the end, most of the energy that his body couldn't contain was condensed in his dantian, where it formed a 5-colored lake formed by the power of the 5 elements. The extremely vigorous power of the 5 elements was vast and mighty in Jiyu Fei's dantian. It was as if a 5-colored bright moon had appeared in his body, illuminating his flesh and bones. The countless acupoints in his body and the meridians that connected them seemed to have been divinized. All of them lit up, as if they were forming a heavenly map in Jiyu Fei's body. The countless acupoints in Jiyu Fei's body were as bright as the stars in the sky. The human body is like the heaven and earth, nurturing endless Tao charm, and can prove countless great Taos. Such a sentence suddenly appeared in Jiyu Fei's mind. Great Taos, what is the great Taos, and what is the Tao? Jiyu Fei murmured to himself, and his body emitted an extraordinary aura. It was as if he had touched the heaven and earth, and his body had become the heaven and earth, merging with the heaven and earth. The barrier of cultivation was broken. Under Jiyu Fei's incomparably calm state of mind, Jiyu Fei's cultivation naturally entered the realm of the 6th tier of the void controlling realm. Boom! The mountain and river cauldron that was floating in front of him suddenly shook, and thousands of divine splendor rushed out from the mouth of the cauldron. The entire heaven and earth were violently shaken by the impact. At this moment, the soul fire that Jiyu Fei had collected was finally refined. After thousands of divine splendor rushed out of the mountain and river cauldron, all of them were like rays of divine rainbow, gathering towards Jiyu Fei, and all of them entered into Jiyu Fei's body. The 5-colored brilliance in his dantian instantly released a myriad of divine splendor. Rumble, an extremely powerful energy wave spread out from Jiyu Fei's body, and the entire ground suddenly undulated violently like waves. The weeds that were taller than people in the surroundings were suddenly completely shattered by the airwaves that surged out in all directions and dissipated in the void. The terrifying power was vast and mighty, and Jiu Fei's inner world was shaking violently. It was as if a five-colored sun had suddenly appeared in this world that did not have any stars yet. The blazing light emitted from Jiu Fei's body illuminated the entire world. Chapter 489. Thick dark clouds floated in the gloomy sky, and the aura of death enveloped the land. In the mountains at the periphery of the Hell Realm, it was deathly silent. Other than the occasional gust of wind that blew past, making heart-palpitating howls that sounded like the wails of ghosts and the howls of gods, there seemed to be no other sound in this world. Suddenly, a faint energy fluctuation came from a cliff that was filled with caves deep in the mountains. This energy was gradually increasing, and soon, the cliff began to shake. Whoosh! On the cliff, a huge rock suddenly flew up like a meteorite, piercing through the void and flying thousands of feet away. Boom! It smashed into the wall of a pitch-black hill on the opposite side and exploded. On the pitch-black mountain, a huge pit immediately appeared, and countless fragments and rocks flew in all directions, creating a loud noise. The chaotic sound echoed in the mountains for a long time, and this loud noise completely broke the silence in the mountains. Among the countless caves on the cliff, one of them lit up, shining with dazzling divine light, and a powerful energy fluctuation surged out from the cave. This energy fluctuation became stronger and stronger, and in the end, it surged on the cliff like a raging sea. The entire cliff shook violently, and cracks began to appear on the pitch-black mountain. Countless rocks were sent flying and rolled down the cliff. In the sky above the cliff, the weather changed, and the dark clouds were all dispersed by this energy fluctuation. They rolled and rolled, dissipating in the void. Boom! In an earth-shattering noise, the entire cliff exploded, emitting a monstrous energy fluctuation, and a dazzling light swept across the sky. The entire world seemed to be completely enveloped by the dazzling light. Waves soared into the sky, the ground shattered, and rocks flew into the sky. The entire region seemed to be completely destroyed and collapsed. The power that could topple mountains and overturn seas surged in all directions, destroying everything in its path. The location of the cliff became the source of destruction, and rays of dazzling light constantly burst out from there, spreading in all directions. Mountains were collapsing, and the earth was cracking. Everything within a 10-kilometer radius was affected. The fissures extended far into the distance, as if doomsday had arrived. A silhouette slowly rose from the ground of destruction. His body was covered in a five-colored divine glow, and he held an ancient cauldron in his hand. He was like a supreme god of war, emitting a powerful and terrifying aura. Is this the power of the Nine Heavens Imperial Void Realm? Jiu Fei held the mountain and river cauldron in his hand, and rose high up into the sky from the terrifying energy waves. The aura of a powerful warrior who looked down on the world was completely revealed. The cliff no longer existed. Dust soared high into the sky and enveloped the entire world. It took a long time for the dust to settle down. On the ground, an incomparably huge circular pit could be vaguely seen in place of the cliff. Jiu Fei soared into the sky and stood in the void. His entire body was shrouded in five-colored rays of light. A powerful aura spread out in all directions without any concealment. He calmly looked down at his masterpiece. His state of mind was like an ancient well. There was no excitement, no excitement. Everything seemed to be within his expectations. The mountain and river cauldron in his hand was hidden in his palm. It has to be said that the weapon refinement technique was comparable to the techniques of martial cultivators. It could fuse weapons into one's body. However, Jiu Fei could only fuse the mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold heavenly sword into his palm. With Jiu Fei's current level of cultivation, it was still difficult for him to fuse these treasured weapons into his body and control them at will. After Jiu Fei kept the mountain and river cauldron, he immediately retracted his aura and prepared to leave this place. However, at this moment, a deep roar suddenly came from the ground. It was as if there was a clap of thunder in the depths of the earth. Immediately, Jiu Fei felt a powerful and terrifying wave of energy rapidly approaching the surface. Then, with a boom, a giant head rushed out from the giant pit below. Boom! Like a volcanic eruption, a large amount of black flames rushed out from the giant head. This was followed by billowing demonic aura. Then, dark clouds covered the sky, and the world was plunged into darkness in an instant. Ji Yufei was extremely shocked. He clearly saw the head that rushed out from the ground. It was as black as ink and the size of a small mountain. Within the skull, there was a ball of black light, like a black sun, emitting endless black flames. A roar resounded through the sky, causing a bone-piercing chill to rise in Ji Yufei's heart. The mountain was suddenly filled with a ghostly aura. It was a vast expanse of darkness. Just one look at it was enough to send chills down one's spine. Rumble. The earth was shaking violently. The ground undulated violently like waves. A giant creature was struggling out of the ground. Giant bone claws, bone wings surrounded by demonic aura, and a large mouth that spewed demonic flames and black gas. All of this was attacking Ji Yufei's nerves. Under the vast and mighty demonic aura, a giant demonic dragon with a pitch-black skeleton broke out from the ground. It spread its bone wings, stirring up a terrifying strong wind, and flew into the sky. In the billowing demonic aura, the demonic dragon's huge skeleton was faintly discernible. Its body was at least 20 to 30 feet long. When it spread its wings, it blocked the sky. Two ghostly flames emitted from the demonic aura and swept towards Ji Yufei. This was a terrifying undead creature. Its soul fire was incomparably powerful and full of demonic nature. Like a black sun, its huge skull bloomed with endless black light. Undead King. Ji Yufei sensed the terrifying and evil demonic aura from the demonic dragon. He couldn't help but be moved. He didn't expect that there was such a terrifying existence sleeping under the cliff. No wonder Ji Yufei didn't find any trace of undead creatures in this area. It seemed that those undead creatures knew that there was a big guy sleeping under this area. That's why they didn't come close. If this big guy suddenly rushed out of the ground while he was refining the soul fire in the mountain and river cauldron, the consequences would be unimaginable. When Ji Yufei thought of this, he couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Fortunately, he was refining the soul fire in the mountain and river cauldron in the inner world. If he were to refine it in the outside world, he was afraid that he would alarm the bone dragon hiding underground. It actually woke me up from my slumber. Damn it. A powerful soul fluctuation came from the demonic aura. This voice resounded in Ji Yufei's heart. The black bone demonic dragon seemed to be very angry. The soul fire in its skull was violently pulsing. Boom! A bone claw that was as black as ink and shrouded in demonic chi stretched out from the demonic clouds and directly grabbed at Ji Yufei, who was standing in the void. Under the envelopment of the bone claw, the void shook violently. Without any superfluous words, Ji Yufei directly punched upwards. A dazzling golden light bloomed on his fist, illuminating the pitch-black night sky. It was as if a golden sun had suddenly emerged in this dark world. The bone claw was the size of a small mountain. It covered the sky and the earth, and it emitted a terrifying demonic aura. In comparison, Ji Yufei's fist seemed insignificant. The two were not proportional at all. It was like a watermelon and a sesame seed. However, Ji Yufei's small fist surged with a powerful force that was enough to contend against the bone claw. Although the fist was small, it could smash the world. The dazzling golden fist directly shook the void. When it was punched, it seemed to collapse the world. The fist energy was so fierce that it was unbelievable. Bang! Ji Yufei's golden fist collided with the huge bone claw. There was a dull sound of impact, like rolling thunder from the ninth heaven. The golden and black energy surged violently and swept out in all directions like a tide. The mighty aftershock turned all the stones on the ground into powder. The dust on the ground rolled, and the airwaves spread out. A thick layer of the sand on the ground was scraped off. So powerful. Ji Yufei flew back. His body emitted a dazzling 5-colored divine splendor. It was as if he was wearing a 5-colored battle armor. It was awe-inspiring. Ji Yufei retreated hundreds of feet away before he stabilized his body. He was secretly shocked. The strength of this demonic creature seemed to be stronger than the undead kings in the outer regions of this world. The two forces collided head-on. Not a single intact stone could be found on the ground. Everything within a radius of hundreds of feet was razed to the ground. Ji Yufei's cultivation had improved greatly. He was looking for someone to practice with. This black-bone demonic dragon appeared at the right time. The opponent's strength made Ji Yufei feel a strong desire to fight. Roar! Ji Yufei roared. He used the 8 desolation steps and turned into a 5-colored divine light. He broke through the layers of demonic aura and rushed into the demonic clouds to fight with the black-bone demonic dragon. This was the most thrilling battle that Ji Yufei had experienced in the Hell Realm. The strength of the black-bone demonic dragon seemed to have surpassed the powerful undead kings. It was not inferior to the old monsters at the peak of the 9th heaven. Its battle strength was terrifying. The black-bone demonic dragon spewed demonic fire from its mouth, burning the heavens and scorching the earth. It wanted to directly refine Ji Yufei within the terrifying demonic fire. The demonic fire displayed great power, burning the sky until it was distorted. This kind of demonic fire was a type of extremely cold, yin, fire. It did not have a frightening temperature, nor did it have a dazzling fiery light. It was pitch black, and although it was kept out by Ji Yufei's protective dipper chi, it did not really burn him. But even so, Ji Yufei felt waves of yin, cold air attacking his body. It was as if his body was about to crack from the cold air. And the black-bone demonic dragon's eye sockets constantly shot out terrifying destructive demonic light that swept towards Ji Yufei. It pierced through the void and swept in all directions. The black-bone demonic dragon's attack was so fierce that Ji Yufei had no choice but to materialize the mountain and river cauldron and the purple-gold divine sword in his hands. With the mountain and river cauldron in his left hand and the purple-gold divine sword in his right, the mountain and river cauldron vaguely displayed a power that could suppress the world in all directions even though it was not activated with vital chi. All the demonic fire cold air that surged towards Ji Yufei was immediately dissipated by the mighty power of the mountain and river cauldron when it reached Ji Yufei's body. Ji Yufei waved the purple-gold divine sword to block the destructive black light that swept towards him. He did not activate the power of the divine sword, but the terrifying demonic light that shot out from the black-bone demonic dragon's eye sockets shattered under the divine sword. Ji Yufei broke through the demonic fire and killing ray and rushed to the top of the black-boned demonic dragon. Then, the 5 elements world rushed out from his body and enveloped the 5 directions. Like 5 worlds, it pressed down on the black-boned demonic dragon below. Updates will be made in time. Chapter 490. Ji Yufei displayed a terrifying combat technique. The power of the heavens and earth was continuously guided out and fused with his 5 elemental powers. The 5 elemental realms appeared around him. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The 5 elemental realms were displayed to the extreme. It was as if there were really 5 illusory realms surrounding Ji Yufei, emitting vast 5 elemental powers. Rumble, in the end, the 5 elemental realms surrounding Ji Yufei turned from illusory into reality and appeared in 5 directions around Ji Yufei. The 5 elemental realms descended from the sky and pressed down on the black-boned demon dragon. It was as if 5 worlds were pressing down on the demon dragon at the same time. Bam! The huge black-boned demon dragon was actually pressed down by the 5 elemental realms. Endless demonic chi dissipated. Boom! There was a loud noise. Dust flew into the sky. The black-boned demon dragon was directly smashed into the ground. Roar! A terrifying dragon roar came from the dust. This was not a real sound. It was a powerful soul ripple that directly affected Ji Yufei's heart. In the tumbling dust and demonic chi, a black light burst out. It was like a black sun, illuminating the heavens and the earth. The terrifying soul ripple caused the entire world to tremble. The black light shot out and the dust dissipated. A black-boned demon dragon flapped its bony wings and rose from the sky. The soul fire in its skull was as bright as a black sun. It emitted an unprecedentedly powerful soul ripple. Lowly creature, I will let you know the consequences of angering me. The soul fire in the dragon's skull pulsed violently. It seemed to be very angry. Hehe, you idiot. You don't even know that death is at hand. How sad. Ji Fei sneered. Although the black-boned demon dragon was powerful, it was not to be trifled with. It controlled the 5 elemental realms. It could be said that it was invincible. Die. The black-boned demon dragon was enraged, and a destructive black light shone from its eye sockets. It pierced through the void and headed straight for Ji Fei. At the same time, a dragon claw that was wreathed in black demonic flames swiped at Ji Fei, trying to tear him apart. It had to be said that this black-bone devil dragon that was slumbering beneath the earth was really very powerful. If Ji Fei's cultivation had not broken through to the 6th level of the royal void realm, he really would not be a match for this undying devil. But it was different now. His cultivation and strength at the 6th level of the void controlling realm caused Ji Fei's battle prowess to be unparalleled. Every single move he made could shake the void and possessed great divine strength. Moreover, the fusion of the power of heaven and earth and his own 5 elements Yuan Qi gave rise to the 5 elements and 5 worlds. This was a combat skill that was close to divine power and Taoist technique, and it greatly increased Ji Fei's combat strength. Ji Fei's 5 elements world revolved around him. The destructive demonic light that shot out of the demon dragon's eye sockets directly broke into the 5 elements world. However, it was immediately annihilated in the 5 elements world. Swoosh. Ji Fei strode in the 5 elements world as though he was teleporting and avoided the dragon's claw. Bam! A punch landed on the black-bone demonic dragon's skull, sending the demonic dragon flying. Using the desolate steps and walking in the 5 elements world, Ji Fei's speed was unbelievably fast. The black-bone devil dragon could no longer keep up with Ji Fei's speed. Swoosh. Swoosh. Swoosh, countless figures flashed in the void around the black-bone demonic dragon. The sounds of bombardment and the roars of the black-bone demonic dragon resounded continuously. The powerful attacks were something that even the undying demonic creature found hard to endure. Each of Ji Fei's punches and kicks contained great divine strength. Cracks began to appear on the black-bone devil dragon's bones that were harder than refined iron. The purple-gold divine sword and the mountain and river cauldron had already been kept by Ji Fei. Otherwise, this devil would have been killed by Ji Fei. Finally, Ji Fei guided the fire element world out of the 5 elements world to him. The fire element world expanded rapidly. Monstrous divine fire surged and swept out in all directions like raging waves. It enveloped a part of the world and sucked the black-bone devil dragon into it. Roar. The black-bone devil dragon roared again and again. Demonic fire spewed from its mouth and destructive demonic light shot out from its eye sockets. The entire fire element world shook violently under the demonic might of the demon dragon as though it could collapse at any time. This was a world of fire. The terrifying temperature was enough to melt refined iron. Endless divine fire surged towards the demon dragon and enveloped it in an attempt to refine it completely. Swoosh. Ji Fei strolled in the 5 elements world. His long hair and sleeves danced in the wind. His entire body exuded the aura of an expert who looked down on the world. He hid in the void and manipulated the power of fire to obliterate the black-bone devil dragon. However, this demon dragon was impressive. It was indeed an undying devil that was stronger than the undying king. Although it was surrounded by the divine fire and its demonic aura was constantly being refined by the divine fire, it was still difficult to truly injure this devil. As he strolled in the 5 elements world, Ji Fei realized that his speed had increased by a large margin compared to when he was outside the 5 elements world. It was as though he was teleporting. It seemed that it was difficult to obliterate this devil with the power of the fire element world. At the thought of this, Ji Fei took a step forward and arrived in front of the black-bone devil dragon. He threw a punch. In an instant, the power of fire in the entire fire element world was triggered by his punch. It was as though all the power of fire in the world had gathered on Ji Fei's fist when he punched. His entire fist became a dazzling ball of light. It emitted a terrifying temperature that could melt refined iron and a terrifying energy wave that seemed to be able to shatter the void. Bam! The dazzling fist was like a meteor falling from the sky. It landed heavily on the black-bone devil dragon's skull and sent it flying. The soul fire in the skull vibrated violently and wisps of soul fire drifted out. The punch that was unleashed with the power of the fire element world had finally impacted the soul fire of the black-bone devil dragon. In Gu Fei's fire element world, the black-bone devil dragon was at an absolute disadvantage. Although it was powerful, it could not avoid Gu Fei's attack. Gu Fei controlled the fire element world and could sense the subtle changes that occurred in this world. He had the advantage of the right time and the right place to firmly suppress the terrifying black-bone devil dragon. The black-bone devil dragon roared furiously. The soul fire in the skull was like a black sun that was fixed there, emitting waves of mighty soul waves. Powerful soul power rippled out from the black-bone demon dragon's skull like waves and flowed through the entire skeleton that was glowing with a black light. Every bone was bathed in soul power, and there were pitch-black demonic flames throbbing on top of them. The black-bone devil dragon's huge skeleton was faintly discernible in the black flames. The void that it was in seemed to have become a bottomless black hole. It was eerie and terrifying. The divine fire that filled the sky surged towards the black-bone devil dragon. However, the terrifying divine fire that could melt refined iron was annihilated by the black flames when it approached the black-bone devil dragon. Burning soul power. Is this fellow going to risk his life? Gu Fei stood on the fiery clouds. His eyes shone brightly as he looked at the black-bone devil dragon. He knew that the black flames emitted from the black-bone devil dragon's skeleton were not demonic flames. Instead, they were soul fire that was even more terrifying than demonic flames. The black-bone devil dragon was a terrifying demonic dragon that had fallen in this world. It was an undying demonic creature that had condensed its soul fire. Its soul fire could be said to be filled with demonic qualities. If the soul fire in the black-bone devil dragon's skull exploded on the Tenglong continent, it would be enough to demonize all living creatures in a region and turn them into demonic creatures. The soul fire of an undying demonic creature could not be directly absorbed and refined. The demonic qualities could confuse one's mind and easily cause one to go berserk. Even an expert would need to completely refine the demonic qualities contained in the soul fire before they dared to absorb the soul power of the soul fire. Of course, the demonic qualities were only harmful to cultivators of the righteous path. To cultivators of the demonic path, the soul fire of an undying demonic creature was definitely a great supplement. The stronger the demonic qualities, the better. The black-bone devil dragon, who was burning its soul fire, was really forced into a corner by Gu Fei. It was trapped in this strange void that was filled with raging flames. The vast fire elemental power was rapidly wearing down its soul power. If it did not put up a desperate fight, it would lose its life. It had to be said that the power of the black-bone devil dragon increased greatly after burning its soul fire. It roared and stretched out its two dragon claws, tearing a hole in the void. Boom! Endless demonic flames gushed out from its huge mouth and burned forward. It burned the void until it shattered and the heaven and earth collapsed. The hole split into a huge hole in an instant. The black-bone devil dragon displayed its terrifying power and wanted to break through Gu Fei's fire elemental world and rush out. However, Gu Fei would definitely not allow this undying demonic creature to escape. With a thought, the fire elemental world disappeared, and a greyish world that was like the primal chaos was brought over by him. He kept the black-bone devil dragon in it. The undying demonic creature rushed into the hole in the space that it had just opened and wanted to rush out of the fire elemental world. However, after it rushed out of the fire elemental world, it realized that it had entered another strange void. There was no sky or earth in this void. It was like an undeveloped primal chaos world. The power of the thick earth was vast and mighty in this world, forming a terrifying energy storm that crashed towards the demon dragon like a huge mountain. Boom! A primordial divine mountain collided with the black-bone devil dragon and sent it flying thousands of feet away. Before the black-bone devil dragon could regain its senses, the endless thick earth energy condensed into 5 or 6 huge mountains that descended from the sky and suppressed it under the mountains. Roar! The black-bone devil dragon roared crazily. Its terrifying soul power erupted like a volcano. Pitch-black demonic light pierced through the void and blocked the endless thick earth energy. Rumble. The 5 or 6 huge mountains that were suppressing the black-bone devil dragon crumbled and turned back into thick earth energy. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting apart. The black-bone demonic dragon unleashed its terrifying demonic might, shattering the mountain formed from the chi of the earth and soaring into the sky. Boundless soul demonic light radiated from the gigantic bone body, turning the entire world into a pitch-black world without the slightest bit of light. Damn it! Do you dare to come out and fight? A powerful soul fluctuation spread out in all directions. The black-bone devil dragon was enraged and the soul fire in its skull was pulsing violently. Why wouldn't I dare? Jiu Fei took a step forward and entered the earth elemental world. It was as if a god king had descended and his entire body was enveloped by 5-colored divine light. Chapter 491. The 5 elemental world circled around Jiu Fei's body and enveloped the heavens and the earth. The power of the 5 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth surged violently and emitted a terrifying power that could destroy the heavens and the earth. It was as though the void was about to turn into chaos. The golden light of the metal elemental world shot into the sky and attracted the boundless power of the metal element. It formed a terrifying destructive divine light that pierced through the black-bone demonic dragon. Every ray of divine light was thousands of feet long. They were like divine rainbows that annihilated the space wherever they passed. Roar! The demonic dragon roared, and a wave of soul fire surged out from its skull. It enveloped the entire huge skeletal body, burning the void and shattering thousands of golden divine rainbows. However, as the golden divine rainbows were shattered, a portion of the black-bone demonic dragon's soul fire was also neutralized by the power of the metal element. The power of the black-bone demonic dragon's soul fire was being obliterated bit by bit. As the golden light faded away, a grayish, chaotic energy rushed over from all directions. It was the earth chi of thick earth. Boundless earth chi rose from the ground and gathered, forming an earth elemental world that enveloped the void. Within the tumbling earth chi, the shadows of mountains appeared. It was as though hundreds of thousands of mountains were crashing down on the black-bone demonic dragon from all directions. The entire void seemed to be solidifying, imprisoning the black-bone demonic dragon in this terrifying void. Boom! 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 Boundless earth chi condensed into mountains. It was as though the primordial divine mountains had been drawn over, and they directly collided with the black-bone demonic dragon. The terrifying black fire produced by the black-bone demonic dragon's soul fire displayed its terrifying power. As long as the mountains were burned by the black fire, they would immediately shatter and be difficult to reform. However, when the mountains formed by the earth chi collapsed, the terrifying energy released caused the black fire of the soul fire to dissipate in the void. The power of the earth elemental world could not truly obliterate the black-bone demonic dragon's soul fire. The misty earth chi began to dissipate. At the same time that the thick earth chi dissipated, a large amount of water appeared in the sky. It was as if an entire ocean had been drawn over. The water surged down and surged toward the black-boned demonic dragon with great momentum. Boundless water elemental power transformed into a water dragon that was thousands of feet long. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced towards the black-bone demon dragon. It crashed into the black flames that enveloped the black-bone demon dragon like a black sun suspended in the void. Rumble! The water surged, and the 1,000-foot-long water dragon roared. Water and fire were incompatible, so when the water dragon exploded in the black fire would be annihilated in the void. For a time, the sound of collisions rang out incessantly in the water elemental world. Water vapor rose, and the power of the water elemental shook heaven and earth, about to completely drown the black sun. However, the black-bone demon dragon within the black sun continued to roar. Its soul power surged out and kept the boundless water elemental energy at bay. This scene was undoubtedly shocking. It was as if a black sun had fallen onto the ocean, emitting boundless black light and evaporating layers of water vapor. Although the water elemental world surged, it could not completely annihilate the black sun that had fallen onto the ocean. The 5 elemental world continued to revolve under Jiu Fei's control. Although the power of the water elemental world could not completely obliterate the black bone demon dragon's soul fire, it was not completely ineffective. The black bone demon dragon's soul fire had clearly weakened and was no longer as vigorous. The water that filled the sky began to recede, and boundless green wood chi began to gather from all directions. A green world that was filled with vitality began to appear. Within the green light, there seemed to be flowers and trees faintly appearing. Then, towering trees began to condense and obliterate the black bone demon dragon. The black bone demon dragon roared furiously. It was trapped by the 5 elemental world. After charging out of the metal elemental world, it entered the earth elemental world. After coming out of the earth elemental world, it charged into the water elemental world. It was unable to break free no matter what. The wood elemental world transformed into layers of tree shadows that swept towards the black bone demon dragon. The black bone demon dragon's soul fire was obliterated, causing the black bone demon dragon to be heavily injured. Roar! Damnable ant! Even if my soul is obliterated, I'll drag you down with me. The black bone demon dragon roared and howled. Powerful soul undulations surged out from the black flames. The entire world was sealed by the 5 elemental world, and it was impossible for the black bone demon dragon to charge out. There was only one outcome for it, and that was to have its soul fire obliterated and vanish from this world. The black bone demon dragon was in despair. Then, boundless black flames erupted from the black bone demon dragon's skull. The entire enormous skeleton surged with monstrous flames, and the entire sky was plunged into a black sea of flames. The 5 elemental world that trapped the black bone demon dragon was immediately affected, and the 5 elemental world shook violently. The black flames were so dazzling in the shapeless world, and it was as if black clouds had enveloped the 5 elemental world. The black flames surged, and it was getting more and more intense. It was already so glaring that one could barely open their eyes and couldn't look at it directly. It was only then that Ji Yufei realized that black flames could also be so dazzling. There was nothing more terrifying than a powerful enemy's counterattack before death. Even in this world of death, the black bone demon dragon could be considered a powerhouse. Its desperate counterattack almost shattered the entire void. Boundless black flames swept out from Ji Yufei's 5 elemental world. He, who was traversing through the 5 elemental world, also felt threatened. The black bone demon dragon's soul fire was completely ignited. The terrifying black flames caused the void to shatter, and the 5 elemental world was collapsing. Ji Yufei suffered a great impact, and blood flowed from his mouth and nose. He quickly retreated and avoided the surging black flames. Lowly ant, go to hell. Within the boundless black flames, there was an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation. A bone demon dragon charged out from the depths of the black flames, and its huge black bone demon dragon claw tore at Ji Yufei, who was flying backwards. At this moment, the black bone demon dragon's strength had risen to a terrifying level. The black bone demon dragon's claw tore through the void, and space itself was torn apart. Burning the soul fire was an attack that cost one's life, and it couldn't last long. Although the dragon claw, which was the size of a small mountain, had yet to reach Ji Yufei, he felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. The void around him had been sealed, and it was difficult for him to dodge, nor was there any way to dodge. You're the one who's going to die. Ji Yufei roared angrily. Then, an extremely sharp and terrifying sword aura spread out from his right hand. Rays of purple divine light shot out from his palm, and a purple gold divine sword began to condense in his hand. Swoosh! 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 Although his breath had been locked by the black bone demon dragon, and no matter how he dodged, he would still be caught by the black bone demon dragon claw. However, he could still retreat and extend the time it took for the black bone demon dragon claw to reach him. He fought for this moment of buffer time, and it could be said to be a moment of life and death. In this short moment, it was enough for Ji Yufei to use the purple gold divine sword. Buzz! The sound of a sword resonated through the heavens, and then, a purple sword aura rushed out from Ji Yufei's right hand. The sword aura was like a dragon, and it instantly soared thousands of feet, broke through the layers of black flames, and directly split the black bone demon dragon claw in half. What kind of sword is this? How is this possible? The black bone demon dragon's terrified soul ripples came from within the black flames. The purple sword aura was like a hot knife through butter, and the endless black flames dissipated under the sword aura. Swoosh! With a sound, Ji Yufei could vaguely see a huge bone body being split in half by the sword aura. The endless flames of the soul dispersed, but it was immediately absorbed by the dazzling sword aura. The divine sword in his hand emitted a weak but joyful spiritual ripple. Ji Yufei immediately understood. That was the sword soul devouring the soul power that the black bone demon dragon had dispersed. He never would have thought that the sword soul had the ability to devour soul power. Since the sword soul could devour soul power, then the mountain and river cauldron was also a supreme treasure with a soul. Could it also devour soul power? It seemed like he had to find an opportunity to test it out. At the thought of this, Ji Yufei only felt a wave of tiredness hit him. When he struck with the sword just now, the divine sword had instantly absorbed a large amount of his vitality. Although he was prepared, Ji Yufei was still secretly shocked. His cultivation had increased to the 6th heaven of the void controlling realm, but he could still barely strike with the sword twice. He did not know when he would be able to truly control this supreme treasure. It was really hard to imagine how high the cultivation of the original owner of the purple gold divine sword had reached. Without a doubt, the person who could control the supreme treasure was definitely the most powerful existence in the world. Ji Yufei struck out the mountain and river cauldron, absorbing the chaotic energy and the black flames that had yet to dissipate into the mountain and river cauldron, then refining and absorbing them. The simple and unadorned cauldron, surrounded by rays of divine light, quickly flew back to Ji Yufei, then entered his left hand. Very soon, a vast wave of vitality surged out from the mountain and river cauldron in his left hand, quickly replenishing the vitality that he had consumed. Ji Yufei's vitality was rapidly recovering, and very soon, he had once again returned to his peak state. The mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword were both supreme treasures, possessing unfathomable power. The mountain and river cauldron could refine all kinds of energy, while the purple gold divine sword could absorb soul power to strengthen the sword soul. This was the most basic ability of these two treasures. The power of the mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword was definitely not limited to this, but this had to be slowly excavated. Ji Yufei believed that as his cultivation increased, the power of these two treasures would gradually be revealed. The entire mountain ridge in the surrounding area had already been destroyed in the battle between Ji Yufei and the black bone demonic dragon. Ji Yufei did not stay for long, because this battle had already alarmed the undead creatures in other areas. There were figures of undead creatures in the vicinity, but those undead creatures did not dare to get too close, and only spied in the dark. Ji Yufei was also too lazy to care about these undead creatures that were spying in the dark, because the soul fire of these undead creatures was too weak, and could not attract Ji Yufei's interest, so it was not worth his time to make a move. Chapter 492. Back in the Bone Emperor city of the White Bone Emperor, the little monk who had walked out of the tomb of the Buddhist lord and the mummified old monk at the peak of the Black Mountain had joined hands. They had almost turned the Bone Emperor's lair upside down and dug out a tricolored Buddhist lamp under the huge city. The old tortoise was an almighty figure of the demon clan in ancient times. He knew many ancient secrets and recognized the origin of the Buddhist lamp under the huge city. The Buddhist lamp of the three realms was said to be able to illuminate the three realms and purify all evil, ferocious beings, and malicious spirits. It was a Buddhist weapon refined by the ancient Buddhist lord and possessed supreme power. Even the old tortoise was envious of it, so he tried to snatch it. Ji Yufei waited for the old tortoise to lead the group of abnormal experts away before he harvested the soul fire of the undead creatures. This was a rare opportunity. Outside the Naraka realm, only the people of the demon path dared to kill the common people and collect soul power. The people of the righteous path would never dare to commit such heresy. In the Naraka realm, even if Ji Yufei killed all the undead creatures, no one would come out to stop him. This was because this world belonged to the dead. The undead creatures that lived in this world of death were ferocious and abnormal creatures. Exterminating these ferocious creatures was, in fact, eliminating demons and protecting the Tao. However, Jiyu Fei and the Old Tortoise had underestimated the undead creatures in the Bone Emperor city, especially the 5-colored skeleton and the purple gold skeleton. Even though they had been illuminated by the tricolored Buddhist light of the Three Realms Buddhist lamp and taken a blow from the old monk, they still had unparalleled combat strength. If Jiyu Fei did not have the protection of the two supreme treasures, the purple gold divine sword and the mountain and river cauldron, he was afraid that it would not be him harvesting the undead creature's soul fire, but the undead creature's blood essence. In this world of death, the powerful undead creatures believed in the legend of the Holy Clan living in the depths of this world with flesh and blood. After these undead creatures saw that Jiyu Fei and his companions were living beings with flesh and blood, they did not suspect that they were outsiders. They firmly believed that they were Holy Clan members who had come from the depths of this world of death. The appearance of the legendary sacred race in the periphery of the Death Continent had caused quite a commotion. After Jiyu Fei left the mountain, he discovered that many cities along the way had been destroyed. Moreover, looking at the traces of destruction, it seemed to have happened recently. Wherever there was a city, there would always be a king guarding it. Jiyu Fei discovered a shattered golden skull in one of the ruins. Only half of the skull was left. It looked like it was cast in gold, still flickering with a golden luster. Its hardness was comparable to real gold essence. With a single look, one could tell that this was the skull of a king. An undying king fell here, killed by someone, only half of his skull remaining. The rest of his body was nowhere to be seen. The outer region of the continent of death did not seem to be very peaceful, as kings had fallen. Jiyu Fei could not help but feel quite startled. There seemed to be powerful creatures that could kill kings nearby. In another city that had already been turned into ruins, bones were scattered everywhere. There were sparkling and translucent divine bones and demonic bones that were shrouded in demonic aura. But without exception, those bones were scattered in the ruins and not a single one of them was complete. It was obvious that the undead creatures in the city had been killed on the spot. In the ruins, there were still ghost-like soul fires drifting about. There were no soul fluctuations, no soul power ripples, and these were soul fires that were on the verge of extinction. Among the bricks under a broken wall, Jiyu Fei discovered a pitch-black skull that was glowing with a black light. The skull's top had been opened, and the soul fire had been taken away. After carefully observing the ruins, Jiyu Fei made a new discovery. Among the broken bricks and tiles, Jiyu Fei found some black silt-like things. These things were splashed on the collapsed wall and emitted an unpleasant stench. It was a little like the stench of rotten flesh. Thinking of this, Jiyu Fei vaguely guessed something. He could not help but frown. This was the Bone Emperor's territory. How could there be such evil creatures? Could it be that there was a conflict between the two giants, the Bone Emperor and the Corpse Emperor? Among the undead creatures, only those terrifying evil corpses would have rotten flesh. Jiyu Fei felt that something was wrong. He was afraid that something big would happen in the outer region of the world of death. He immediately left the ruins and went to the agreed place with Old Tortoise. Along the way, he did not encounter any powerful undead creatures. There were only some weak undead creatures hiding in the rubble or crawling on the ground. The agreed place between Jiyu Fei and Old Tortoise was in a small valley. The place was covered with dark brown rubble, and it was very desolate and remote. Under the dusky sky, even a small valley would make one's heart palpitate. There was a yin fog lingering in the valley, but this small valley was not a yin place where yin energy gathered. Jiyu Fei arrived at the entrance of the small valley. He observed carefully and then flicked his sleeves toward the ground in front of him. A strong wind immediately appeared out of thin air and swept in all directions. Suddenly, dust flew everywhere. The strong wind rolled up the dark brown dust on the ground. There seemed to be a flickering light under the dust. Although it was very weak, it was very eye-catching in this dusky environment. After the dust on the ground was completely swept away by the strong wind, a few demonic patterns that emitted a demonic light appeared in front of Jiyu Fei. The demonic patterns that Old Tortoise laid down are not destroyed. There should not be a powerful existence visiting this place. After seeing the demonic patterns carved on the ground, Jiyu Fei immediately relaxed. Old Tortoise's cultivation had been restored to the demon god realm. The demonic patterns that he carved had unpredictable power. Unless it was an expert of the same level as Old Tortoise, it would be absolutely difficult to break. Jiyu Fei used a mysterious footwork under his feet. Using the method taught by Old Tortoise, he passed through the ground engraved with the demonic patterns and walked into the valley. The valley was empty. As far as the eye could see, there were only rocks and no undead creatures. This small valley had been sealed by Old Tortoise's demonic patterns that condensed the power of heaven and earth. The undead creatures would definitely not be able to enter. Jiyu Fei noticed that a rock facing the valley entrance had been split into two and became a stone platform. There seemed to be something on the stone platform that was shining with a misty white brilliance. That is. Jiyu Fei sensed an extremely weak wave of demonic power. He walked closer to take a look and saw a jade slip that was flowing with a crystal luster on the stone platform. This jade slip should have been left behind by Old Tortoise before he left. It should contain the message that Old Tortoise left for him. Jiyu Fei reached out and grabbed the jade slip on the stone platform. Just as he was about to read the information in the jade slip with his divine thoughts, a strong wave of demonic power suddenly erupted outside the valley. Then, a terrifying and powerful aura immediately came from the entrance of the valley. Chapter 493. In the dim valley, Jiyu Fei obtained the jade slip left by Old Tortoise before he left. When he was about to read the information in the jade slip with his divine telekinesis, a powerful demonic aura suddenly erupted outside the valley. Jiyu Fei was immediately moved. He put away the jade slip and rushed to the entrance of the valley. Outside the valley, the demonic aura soared into the sky. The demonic patterns engraved by the old turtle on the ground all emerged from the ground, emitting a bright demonic light. The purple demonic light dispersed the darkness and illuminated the entire world. When Jiyu Fei arrived at the entrance of the valley, endless demonic patterns soared into the sky and turned into terrifying light blades that resembled the light of destruction. They tore through the void and slashed at a skeleton trapped in the formation. "Who's plotting against me?" The skull of the skeleton trapped in the formation flashed with bright black and white light, and a powerful soul fluctuation surged out. Jiyu Fei could feel the anxiety and fear in the soul fluctuation. The demonic patterns engraved by the old turtle possessed an unfathomable power. They gathered the power of heaven and earth nearby and laid down a powerful formation. "Oh, my hand is broken, my hand is broken, F***ck. My toes. Damn you, don't hit my face, or I'll get mad at you." The undead creature in the formation was in danger. The light blades formed by the demonic patterns constantly slashed at its body, making clanging sounds and scattering bone powder on its bones. However, Jiyu Fei found it interesting that the undead creature was still making a fuss at this critical juncture. Jiyu Fei couldn't help but admire it. However, what truly shocked Jiyu Fei was that the skeleton of this undead creature was actually different from the masses. The left side of the skeleton was pitch black and shiny, whereas the right side of the skeleton was crystalline like divine jade, suffused with a misty sheen, pure white, and flawless. The black half of the bone did not emit any demonic aura, so it was not a demonic bone. How is this possible? Jiyu Fei was very surprised. He sensed a familiar aura from the bones of the undead creature. Yin and yang, that's right. Jiyu Fei could sense the aura of yin and yang from this skeleton. He could not help but think of the supreme expert who had walked out from the Taiji yin-yang jade pendant. At this time, the black skeleton trapped in the demon array had also discovered Jiyu Fei. An incomparably shocking soul fluctuation spread out from the undead creature's skull. The black and white soul fire was violently throbbing. How is this possible? There shouldn't be any flesh and blood living beings in this world. The undead was shocked to see Jiyu Fei. Swoosh. With a bang sound, a light blade cut through the void like a divine weapon and brushed past the eyebrow bone of the undead creature, sweeping away a layer of bone powder. "I told you not to hit my face. F***ck. The black and white skulls suddenly became furious. The black and white light in their skulls blossomed with resplendent rays of light. It was as if a black and white sun was fixed there. Yin-yang great shift. The skeletal hands of the black and white skulls moved again and again. The black and white soul fire surged out from their hands, forming large and small taiji yin-yang diagrams that protected them. Countless demon runes transformed into light blades that spun and chopped down from all directions. Then, an astonishing scene occurred. All the light blades that had slashed the taiji yin-yang chi were all sent flying away. They didn't fly back along the original path, but their direction was shifted. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless light blades emitted intense energy fluctuations. They were like flowers that filled the sky as they shot in all directions. Several light blades went straight towards the place where Ji Yufei was standing. Ji Yufei soared into the sky and evaded the light blades transformed from demon runes. A strong rumbling sound came from under his feet. Dust soared into the sky. Several light blades destroyed the place where Ji Yufei had just stood a moment ago. "Brat, what are you still looking at? Hurry up and let me out." The black and white skulls roared again and again. It seemed to be extremely strenuous. Balls of yin and yang light lingered around its body and moved away all the light blades that were shooting towards it. However, as long as the demon runes on the ground were not erased, the light blades transformed from the demon runes would be endless. Even if the black and white skulls could resist for a while, their soul power would be completely exhausted by the demon formation after a long time. "Why should I let you out?" Ji Yufei said with a smile. He stood in the void and looked down at the black and white skeletons who were in a panic. Ji Yufei could already tell that the strange skeleton that had broken into the demon formation set up by Old Tortoise was not weak. It was comparable to an undead king. However, it was weaker than the black bone dragon that he had killed. This skeleton was not a match for him. Ji Yufei came to this conclusion. However, he did not dare to be careless. Who knew if this yin and yang skeleton had any powerful trump cards? The yin and yang skeleton was shouting and shouting. All kinds of indecent language came out from its skull. It was even more ruffian than Old Tortoise. It should not be a good bird. Undead creatures could only communicate with other creatures through soul fluctuations. This ruffian skeleton was no exception. It had no flesh and blood, only bones, which limited its ability to speak. Unless it could be reborn and completely reverse life and death, it would be absolutely impossible for these undead creatures to regain their ability to speak. "Brat, if you are willing to let me out, I will give you a saint spring." The yin and yang skeleton shouted. It could not hold on any longer. The soul flame in its skull began to dim. Using the yin and yang great shift seemed to consume a large amount of soul power. It should be known that this demon formation was set up by Old Tortoise, a demon god-level monster. It definitely had the power to kill an undead king. The yin and yang skeleton was only able to hold on until now because of its yin and yang great shift. It was able to move the killing light formed by the demon runes away. "What is a saint spring?" Ji Yufei was startled. This was the first time he had heard of the term saint spring. However, if the opponent was willing to use this saint spring to exchange for its life, then this item was definitely not simple. The yin and yang skeleton's jaw almost dropped to the ground. You actually don't know what a saint spring is? Could it be that you are not a person of this world?" The yin-yang skeleton was extremely shocked. While it was blocking the purple light blades that were constantly slashing at it from all directions, it sent out this kind of mental wave. I don't know. What's so strange about it?" Ji Yufei said indifferently. Haha. In fact, in this world of death, a saint spring is not a secret to powerful existences. The yin and yang skeleton analyzed. Ji Yufei became a bit impatient. This yin and yang skeleton talked too much, so he said, "Hurry up and tell me. If you don't, then I will leave. You can slowly enjoy yourself in this formation. Don't. I'll tell you, okay?" The yin and yang skeleton was panicking. If the opponent left, then it would fall here. "I'm listening." Ji Yufei stood in the air and looked down at the yin and yang skeleton that was trapped in the formation. His eyes were calm without a trace of emotion. The life spring is the spring of life. In this world, wherever there is a life spring, there will be living beings with flesh and blood like you. After thinking for a while, the yin-yang skeleton transmitted this mental wave from its skull. Spring of life. Hearing this, Jiu Fei's eyes couldn't help but flash. The value of a spring of life was hard to estimate. Legend has it that the spring water from the spring of life could revive the dead. How do I know whether you are lying or not? In this world of death, there is not a trace of life. How could there be a spring of life? Jiu Fei coldly said. Seeing that Jiu Fei didn't believe it, the yin and yang skeleton couldn't help but become anxious. It quickly said, "What I said is true. Everything in this world has a natural counter to each other. If there is death, then there is life. If there is life, then there is death. This is the heavenly Tao. When the death qi gathers to a certain degree, it will give birth to life." Hearing this, Jiu Fei pondered. This yin and yang skeleton's words seemed to be quite beneficial. The most important thing was that this yin and yang skeleton wasn't his opponent. If this yin and yang skeleton dared to lie to him, then he could just kill it. Thinking about this, the yin and yang skeleton started to shout again. The demon runes formed a blade light that had already begun to break through the yin and yang qi blockade, causing the yin and yang skeleton to be in a dangerous situation. "Hey, hey, hey," I said, "if you don't save me, I will die again." The black and white soul fire in the yin and yang skeleton's skull violently throbbed. Swoosh! Jiu Fei used the 8 desolate steps and rushed down from the sky. He used the footwork that old Tortoise had taught him to pass through the sky full of light blades. Every step he took followed a mysterious path. The demon runes formed a terrifying killing light, but it didn't even touch the corner of his clothes. Hey! Why does this footwork look so familiar? After seeing Jiu Fei's footwork, the yin and yang skeleton's eye sockets suddenly emitted a bright soul light. Huh! Jiu Fei couldn't help but be startled. Could it be that this guy had seen old Tortoise? However, this was not the time for him to think too much. After Jiu Fei entered the demon formation, he quickly arrived at the yin and yang skeleton's side. Boom! The void shook, and the 5 elements 5 worlds rushed out from Jiu Fei's body. The expanded 5 elements world immediately enveloped the yin and yang skeleton. Wow, wow, wow! You actually cultivated an inner world. The yin and yang skeleton cried out. The technique that Jiu Fei displayed was too amazing. This skeleton actually knew about the inner world. This guy didn't seem to be simple. Jiu Fei knew that now was not the time to think about it. The 5 elements world lingered around his body, and the demon runes on the ground emitted a dazzling brilliance. Every demon rune seemed to be alive, rushing up from the ground and turning into a terrible divine light. It pierced through the void and shot toward Jiu Fei. The divine light that condensed the power of heaven and earth was no longer as simple as old Tortoise's demonic power. Countless divine lights directly penetrated the 5 elements world like divine spears and stabbed toward Jiu Fei in the 5 elements world. Jiu Fei's body shook violently as if he had suffered a heavy blow. He never thought that the demon formation that old Tortoise had set up to seal the valley would be so powerful. Chapter 494. The demon marks were created by the demon race's extreme Tao experts by comprehending the heavenly Tao and deriving the essence of the heavens and earth. Every demon mark contained a Tao rhythm and could gather the power of the heavens and earth, possessing unfathomable power. The old turtle was a great demon from ancient times. The demon marks that he mastered were ancient demon marks, which were very different from the demon clan's demon marks of today. Ancient demon inscriptions could be said to be extinct in the Tinglong continent. Other than some ancient demon inscriptions recorded in the ancient books passed down by the great figures of the demon clan, traces of ancient demon inscriptions could only occasionally be found in ancient ruins. However, the ancient ruins that could leave ancient demon marks were either the abodes of great ancient demons or the places where they cultivated in seclusion. Such places were usually dangerous. No one knew what would happen after entering this kind of historical remains, and no one knew if they would be able to come out. Therefore, in the current Tinglong continent, the only great demon that could truly master the ancient demon marks was the ruffian old turtle. It had to be said that ancient demon marks were definitely one of the most powerful Tao marks in the world. The demon formation that the old turtle set up with demon marks was extremely powerful. Those who barged into the demon formation, unless they had the cultivation of an immortal, would not be able to escape death. Outside the valley, demon chi soared into the sky. Demon light pierced through the void and rushed straight up to the sky. Like a destructive divine light, it tore the void and heaven apart. Rumble, terrifying energy spread in all directions. The heaven and earth were shaking. In the thousands of demon light, Ji Fei walked in the five elements world with the ruffian skeleton. He used his 8 steps extreme speed to travel through the five elements world. It was as if he was teleporting. He rushed out of the demon formation and quickly went far away. With such a big movement here, it was hard to guarantee that the powerful creatures in the nearby areas would not find out. This small valley was no longer a place to stay for long. The power of the void in the five elements world allowed Ji Fei's flying speed to increase by a large margin. It was as if he was walking through a narrow crack in the void. With a single step, he was already hundreds of feet away. This extreme speed was something that even he could not predict before. Boss, with your speed, I dare say that no one in the entire outer region is faster than you. Even the Bone Emperor, the Corpse Emperor and the Netherworld Emperor can only follow behind you and eat your fart. The ruffian skeleton began to flatter Ji Fei. Me. Ji Fei sneered. This fellow was even more of a ruffian than the old tortoise. His mouth was full of nonsense. He couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. The surrounding scenery was rapidly flying backward. Walking in the five elements world, Ji Fei was incomparably relaxed. Soon, he had rushed out dozens of miles away. Boss, you really are my idol. What kind of footwork is that? Every step he takes contains the laws of heaven and earth and has a supreme Tao charm. This is definitely a supreme mystic art. I, Old Black, am truly envious. If I could have such speed, I would even dare to take a look at the Bone Emperor's treasury. My admiration for Boss is like an endless torrent of underworld water, like an overflowing sea of blood. It is unstoppable. Boss, I, Old Black, have decided that I will follow you from now on. The ruffian skeleton continued to babble nonsense. Ji Fei turned a deaf ear to it and ignored it, allowing it to talk nonsense. However, Ji Fei had never seen such a glib skeleton before. This ruffian skeleton chattered non-stop for a full half an hour, and there was still no sign of it stopping. At this time, Ji Fei had already rushed out hundreds of miles away, far away from the small valley where he and the old tortoise had agreed to meet. Ji Fei's premonition was really accurate. Just as he and the ruffian skeleton left, a cloud of dark underworld fog appeared from the west of the valley, covering the sky and covering the earth. The soaring demonic aura outside the valley entrance quickly converged. The demonic patterns that pierced through the void and split apart the heaven and earth began to submerge into the ground. The terrifying fluctuations quickly calmed down. When the dark clouds and underworld fog surged over, the energy fluctuations outside the valley entrance had already completely disappeared, as if nothing had happened. At this time, all the undead creatures in this area felt a terrifying aura. A torrential death aura surged between heaven and earth, causing all the undead creatures to tremble with fear. Within the endless death aura, 2 blood-red lights coldly swept over the valley below. The powerful existence within the death aura seemed to have some misgivings. Raw. Hateful Mahakala, he actually set up such a sinister trap and wants me to jump into it. If I catch you, I'll definitely make you taste the pain of refining your soul. The 2 blood-red lights in the death chi disappeared into the darkness. The expert within the death aura seemed to be very angry. Then, the overwhelming death aura surged in the direction where Ji Fei and the ruffian skeleton had disappeared, quickly disappearing into the dusky world. In the dusky world, dark clouds drifted in the sky and underworld fog pervaded the ground. Swoosh! A 5-colored splendor cut through the pitch-black sky like a rainbow and headed south. Who the hell did you provoke? 2 figures were wrapped in the 5-colored rainbow. One was a white-robed youth, and the other was a strange skeleton that was half white and half black. Boss, I'm a compassionate person who is loved by everyone. I'm a good person among the undead creatures. Why would I provoke anyone? The ruffian skeleton said very seriously. Why don't you ask around and see if there's anyone in this world of death who doesn't know me? Hey Tien? Me. I'd be a fool if I believed you. How about I let you meet up with that guy behind you? Ji Yufei said disdainfully. If this ruffian was a good person, then there wouldn't be any bad people in this world. Ji Yufei found out from his conversation with the ruffian skeleton that this guy was called He Tian. This He Tian's strength had already reached the undead monarch realm, and his soul power was incomparably strong. However, it had to be said that this Mahakala seemed to be an out-and-out ruffian. No one knew how this fellow had managed to cultivate to the king realm. Don't. I'm not familiar with that stinky guy. I'm really not familiar with him. He Tian waved his bony hands randomly. He thought to himself, if that guy sees me, won't he tear me apart? Dozens of miles away, a pitch-black death aura surged through the void at high speed, chasing after Ji Yufei and the ruffian skeleton He Tian. That guy is really annoying. The 5 elemental worlds appeared around Ji Yufei. He grabbed He Tian and used the 8 desolation steps with all his strength. The 5 elemental worlds completely isolated Ji Yufei and He Tian's aura. Even the fluctuations of their souls were sealed inside the 5 elemental worlds. Ji Yufei and He Tian flew forward at an extremely fast speed. After flying for dozens of miles, Ji Yufei retracted the 5 elemental worlds and descended towards a mountain below. It was a small pitch-black mountain with some strange plants growing on it. These plants were deathly grey in color, and there were fluctuations of yin energy on them. These short plants were sparse, and there were not many of them. They looked like thorns and vines. Ji Yufei had never seen such strange things before. Since these plants could grow in the Hell Realm, they should be plants with yin energy. If they were in the outside world, they would be turned into dust by the yang energy, just like those evil spirits. Hey! They can still track me like this? Standing on the peak, Ji Yufei turned around and looked in the direction they came from. He could sense an aura of death rapidly approaching them. That guy is a capable general under the corpse sovereign. The ruffian skeleton He Tian said with some fear. He knew very well what kind of powerful existence he had offended. Did you take something from him? That's why that guy is chasing after you. Ji Yufei glanced at the ruffian skeleton and said indifferently. The corpse sovereign was one of the 3 most powerful giants in the outer region of this world. He had tens of thousands of corpse generals and corpse soldiers under him. His cultivation was also extremely terrifying. Even the Netherworld Emperor and the Bone Emperor had to be wary of him. Ji Yufei already had a rough idea of the situation in the outer region of the Hell Realm. You can clearly see what I have on me with just one glance. How could I be one of those petty thieves? The ruffian skeleton said with a righteous tone. Is that so? Ji Yufei didn't deny it. Other than his black and white skeleton body, He Tian didn't seem to have anything on him. He didn't even have a weapon. Why is this guy in such a miserable state? It's weird. Ji Yufei couldn't help but think that an undead with strength comparable to a king-level being wouldn't even have a decent weapon on hand. This was simply too unreasonable. However, this wasn't the time for Ji Yufei to think about it. This was because the terrifying expert that was chasing after him was about to arrive. Ji Yufei could already see the Netherworld death aura that emitted a terrifying aura of death suddenly surging out from the dusky sky and earth. Boss, what should we do? The ruffian skeleton He Tian couldn't help but become nervous. The soul fire in his skull was beating violently. The opponent was a capable general of the corpse sovereign. His strength was stronger than a normal king, and he was definitely not a match for him. This guy looked around and began to look for a way out. If there was any danger, he would definitely be the first to escape. It wasn't shameful to escape. Those who could escape but didn't escape were definitely the biggest idiots in the world. In this world, there was nothing more important than one's own life. This was the principle that He Tian believed in. If he could win, then he would fight. If he couldn't, then he would run. He wouldn't try to be a hero. It was more important to stay alive. Perhaps it was because of this that ruffian Metria was able to turn calamities into blessings from time to time in this world of death and survive until now. The undead creatures at the same time as him were almost all dead. Only he was still alive and well. Ji Yufei didn't say anything. He looked at the horizon and his pupils shrank. In front of him, a vast deathly aura was sweeping over, causing his heart to palpitate. The opponent's strength seemed to be above that of the black-bone demonic dragon that he killed. This kind of cultivation was already in between the void-controlling and demigod realm. The evil corpse that was emitting a terrifying deathly aura was stronger than a normal undead king. Chapter 495. In the distant horizon, an endless aura of death covered the sky and covered the earth. Within the ink-black aura of death, there were two flashing blood-red lights. The terrifying energy waves were vast and mighty in the sky. It was as if a peerless evil demon had come out. The aura of death filled the world, making people's hearts palpitate. What a powerful evil corpse! Gu Fei's heart trembled. He stood on the peak of the mountain, calmly watching the nether fog and the aura of death that was rapidly approaching. The opponent's strength aroused Gu Fei's fighting spirit. A martial artist in the 6th layer of the Royal Void Realm had a martial body comparable to a divine weapon. Coupled with his unpredictable combat skills, he could definitely fight against a cultivator in the peak of the 9th layer of the Royal Void Realm. Gu Fei's hair fluttered without any wind. A powerful wave of primordial qi spread from his body, and his skin, which was exposed outside his clothes, immediately shone with a multicolored luster. An invisible wave of air swept out from his body, causing Erebus, who was behind him, to be extremely shocked. It was as if he had been pushed by an invisible hand, causing him to take 3 steps back in succession. Is this guy really a powerhouse who came from the depths of this world? The ruffian skeleton He Tian was extremely shocked. Although Gu Fei looked young, his cultivation level and strength were extremely powerful. The ruffian skeleton He Tian could never have imagined that Gu Fei was actually not a person of this world, but an outsider from the outside world. On the Tinglong continent, there weren't many small worlds like the Hell Path and the Virtual Sky World, which were comparable to perfect worlds. However, what was certain was that such small worlds were definitely not limited to the Hell Path and the Virtual Sky World. The magic power and divine ability of the distant past era reached the heavens. They had the great ability to split the primal chaos and develop heaven and earth. They could create their own inner world, and after a long period of time, they could refine their inner world into a world. The Buddhist Almighty had the saying of the 3,000 worlds. It could be seen that inner worlds were actually not rare. However, those who could refine inner worlds were definitely existences of the immortal realm. Gu Fei being able to refine an inner world was definitely an anomaly. Gu Fei really wanted to have a great battle with such an expert. He wanted to see how strong he had become. However, he couldn't afford to be entangled with this terrifying opponent who was hiding in the death qi. The path of hell was filled with danger. Gu Fei had to find Old Tortoise first before planning his next step. After all, Old Tortoise was a figure from ancient times and seemed to know some secrets of the path of hell. Gu Fei did not want to stay in the hell realm for too long. Moreover, he did not enter the hell realm willingly. If not for Old Tortoise, he would not have entered the world of death. Without sufficient strength, there was an 80 to 90% chance that one would die in these ominous lands. Gu Fei had just stepped onto the path of a true powerhouse and had a long time to cultivate. He did not want to die young. A peerless expert in the Imperial Void Realm had a lifespan of 1,000 years. Gu Fei was not even 30 years old. He looked more like a youth in his early 20s. In 1,000 years' time, no matter how difficult the path of martial arts was, he was confident that he could cultivate to the 9th heaven of the Imperial Void Realm and even have the opportunity to become a demigod. Therefore, Gu Fei wanted to find Old Tortoise as soon as possible and then head into the depths of the Hell Realm. He wanted to find the source of this world and refine the path of hell. At this moment, there was a chilly wind between heaven and earth. The underworld fog filled the air and the death qi descended. It was as if there were countless evil spirits howling in the death qi. It was eerie and terrifying. The entire world seemed to have become a void filled with death. The bone-piercing chilly wind made Gu Fei feel cold all over. The underworld cold wind came from the surging death qi. It was like an invisible sharp blade. The rocks of the entire mountain were melting and collapsing, and layers of dust fell from the chilly wind. If an ordinary person was hit by the chilly wind, their flesh and bones would melt in an instant. Even their spirit would be torn apart and they would never be able to reincarnate. "Boss, that guy is here." He Tian hid behind Ji Yufei. There were a few times when he wanted to run away as fast as he could. The other party was able to become a capable subordinate of the Corpse Emperor. He definitely had great strength and unparalleled combat power. "What are you afraid of?" Ji Yufei sneered. Although the other party was powerful, he was not afraid. Instead, his fighting spirit was like a rainbow, and he wanted to fight it. Rumble. A huge black hand reached out from the surging death chi. It enveloped a part of the void and grabbed at Ji Yufei and the ruffian skeleton Erebus. "It's over, it's over." The ruffian skeleton Erebus was terrified. He wanted to escape, but the entire world seemed to have been sealed by the terrifying power that surged out from the giant hand, making him feel as if he couldn't escape. The entire mountain peak trembled. Endless stone powder fell down. A terrifying strength seemed to want to obliterate everything. The void trembled and transparent ripples spread out. The void that was enveloped by the giant hand cracked like a delicate porcelain. Black spatial cracks began to appear. The terrifying power caused cracks to appear in the void. What bad luck, what bad luck. If I had known this would happen, I would have run away just now. The ruffian skeleton hid behind Ji Yufei. The black and white soul fires in his skull fiercely flickered, emitting terrifying soul fluctuations. "Hey Tian, let's see where you can run now. Haha, even someone from the saint race is here. My luck today isn't bad." Tumbling death energy covered the world. A terrifying aura filled the air, and cold soul fluctuations directly echoed in Ji Yufei's heart. Two beams of blood-red light broke through the layers of death energy, shooting downwards. It was like a terrifying demon was staring at Ji Yufei and He Tian. This evil corpse didn't seem to place Ji Yufei and He Tian in its eyes at all. What a pity. Ji Yufei sighed. Such a master had come at the wrong time. At the same time, a purple flame appeared between his eyebrows. The void in front of him seemed to collapse. Then, Ji Yufei grabbed the ruffian skeleton He Tian and stepped forwards, vanishing into the void. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The moment that Ji Yufei and He Tian vanished, the black hand came crashing down from the sky, directly smashing apart the entire mountain peak. The world shook, dust flew into the air, and rocks shot through the air. For a time, it was as if the heavens and earth were collapsing. Amidst the tumbling death energy, a strong soul fluctuation was transmitted. The terrifying existence within the death energy had never imagined that Ji Yufei and He Tian would suddenly vanish into the void. Roar. How could this be? A tall figure loomed in the death energy. Two beams of blood-red light swept in all directions. The evil corpse wanted to find Ji Yufei and He Tian. However, it found nothing in the end. Ji Yufei and He Tian seemed to have suddenly disappeared. It wasn't like they seemed to have disappeared. They disappeared into thin air, and it couldn't sense any of their auras or soul fluctuations anymore. The evil corpse emitted a monstrous death energy, roaring again and again. The entire world shook, and all the undead within 100 li radius trembled in fear. Boom, 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 that terrifying figure casually bombarded downwards, and mountain peaks were continuously blasted apart. Dust rose high into the sky, and some of the weaker undead creatures were also affected. Their bones and bodies were shattered, and their souls were scattered. That terrifying evil corpse roared for a while before stopping. Then, the endless death energy began to recede like a tide, completely submerging into the evil corpse's body. A figure shrouded in black energy appeared high up in the sky. Wow. Boss, you've really refined an inner world. My admiration for you is like a torrential. Stop. When Ji Yufei heard the ruffian skeleton He Tian's words, he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Goosebumps rose all over his body, and he hastily interrupted He Tian's words. Ji Yufei and He Tian stood on a hillside. This small world was less than 10 li in radius, and most of it was bare sand and mud without any plants. There wasn't a lot of spiritual energy in this world, and everything was still evolving. However, in a valley where spiritual energy was converging, Ji Yufei had opened up a medicinal field for planting spiritual herbs. The 9-leaf longevity grass and 10,000-year-old black ginseng were transplanted into the medicinal field. "Boss, I couldn't tell that you're actually a great hidden expert," He Tian said in an ingratiating manner. He thought that this kid seemed to be more proficient in the art of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger than himself. Of course, these words could be said out loud. To be able to refine an inner world, one's cultivation had to be at least at the immortal realm. However, if this kid was an immortal realm expert, why didn't he dare to fight with that evil corpse, and instead hid in his inner world? This was really strange. The ruffian skeleton He Tian couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. Ji Yufei suddenly turned to look at He Tian. His gaze was incomparably deep, and no one knew what he was thinking. "Boss, you..." He Tian couldn't help but feel his heart palpitate under Ji Yufei's gaze. This was Ji Yufei's inner world, and Ji Yufei was the supreme god of this world. If he used the power of heaven and earth to kill him, he wouldn't be able to fight back at all. He Tian was secretly shocked. After a long while, Ji Yufei withdrew his gaze and said indifferently, "I didn't expect that a guy like you would have such guts despite your mediocre cultivation." The evil corpse outside was extremely powerful, and its strength was comparable to that of a human demigod. Ji Yufei wasn't certain that he could defeat it. Of course, if he used the purple gold divine sword, Ji Yufei was confident that he could kill it with his sword. However, after he used the sword, a large amount of his vitality would definitely be absorbed by the divine sword. If this ruffian skeleton took the opportunity to attack him when he was weak, he would probably also be defeated by this guy. The ruffian skeleton He Tian was definitely not a kind person. Ji Yufei was sure that this He Tian was like Old Tortoise, who was good at backstabbing others. Of course, this ruffian skeleton might even be worse than Old Tortoise. "Please, I'm just bones from head to toe. I don't have any guts, alright?" The ruffian skeleton He Tian said as a mental strength spread out from his skull. Although He Tian was an undead creature, there were no obstacles in the conversation between Ji Yufei and He Tian. "Tell me, where did you keep that thing?" Ji Yufei couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with He Tian, so he got straight to the point. As expected, this guy must have taken something important from the evil corpse outside. Otherwise, that evil corpse wouldn't have chased after this ruffian skeleton. "Boss, I'm innocent. I really didn't take anything from that stinky guy," He Tian said miserably. Chapter 496. The Corpse Emperor's competent generals were extremely powerful and would make for a decent opponent. However, Ji Yufei was unwilling to get entangled with them, so he retreated into his inner world. Ji Yufei and the ruffian skeleton He Tian stood on a hillside in his inner world. Ji Yufei wanted to know why the demonic corpse was so relentless in its pursuit of He Tian. "If you don't want to tell me, then I'll do it myself." Ji Yufei pressed towards He Tian. This fellow was extremely cunning. If he didn't teach him a lesson, he would never tell the truth. Don't. When the ruffian saw that Ji Yufei's attitude had turned cold, he couldn't help but panic. If Ji Yufei really used a soul-searching technique to read his memories, all his secrets would be revealed to Ji Yufei. Furthermore, if Ji Yufei didn't have a good grasp of the soul-searching technique, his consciousness would be completely erased if he wasn't careful, and he would become a mindless skeleton. Therefore, before Ji Yufei could make his next move, the soul fire in He Tian's skull, which looked like a Tai Chi symbol, suddenly emitted a dazzling light. A powerful soul wave spread out from the skull. Then, a black and white brilliance rushed out from He Tian's right eye socket. Within the brilliance was something. It was a square seal, an ancient seal. More accurately speaking, it was a broken ancient seal. The moment the ancient seal rushed out from He Tian's skull, Ji Yufei's hands immediately trembled. 2 weak soul waves were emitted from his hands. The mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword, which had been refined into Ji Yufei's hands, actually showed signs of rushing out from Ji Yufei's hands. As if they had met an old enemy, the mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword vibrated in Ji Yufei's hands and emitted a strong desire to fight. How can this be? The mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword are actually reacting to this ancient seal. Could it be that this ancient seal is actually a supreme treasure like the mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword? Ji Fei was very shocked, but he didn't show it on his face. The mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword's spirit fluctuated intensely from his hands. Ji Fei's left hand emitted a hazy primordial chaos chi, while his right hand shone with the purple gold divine sword. The ancient seal enveloped by yin-yang qi rushed out from He Tian's skull and floated in front of He Tian. This ancient seal was only the size of a fist, but it gave off a feeling. The ancient seal was covered in cracks, as if it could collapse at any time. As if sensing the existence of the mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword, the ancient seal also began to vibrate. Transparent ripples that were visible to the naked eye spread out from the ancient seal like water waves. Ji Fei felt an immense pressure from this ancient seal. It was as if this wasn't an ancient seal, but a giant mountain that couldn't be climbed. Your hand. At this moment, the ruffian skeleton, He Tian, had also sensed the abnormality in Ji Fei's hands. Two powerful auras surged out from Ji Fei's hands, causing it to tremble in fear. This ancient seal was extraordinary. Ji Fei could already confirm that this ancient seal was definitely a supreme treasure. It was no wonder that the evil corpse would chase after He Tian relentlessly. However, this supreme treasure seemed to have been heavily damaged. The ancient seal was covered in cracks, and there was a faint undulation of soul power coming from it. Hum. With a sword hum, the purple gold divine sword in Ji Fei's right hand turned into a ray of purple light and shot out. Sword chi shot into the sky from Ji Fei's inner world, and the purple sword radiance illuminated the entire small world with a purplish gold color. Boom! With a huge tremor, an ancient cauldron surrounded by hazy primordial chaos aura rushed out from Ji Fei's left hand. An aura that seemed to originate from the primordial chaos immediately filled the space between heaven and earth. The two supreme treasures shot into the sky and emitted a terrifying pressure that caused the entire small world to tremble. The mighty aftershocks directly pressed the ruffian skeleton, He Tian, to the ground. Roar! Boss, hurry up and put away your two treasures. My bones are about to be crushed. The soul fire in He Tian's skull pulsed violently, and he was terrified. At this moment, Ji Fei was in a difficult situation. Although he was not overwhelmed by the powerful pressure, the mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword had already left Ji Fei's control. Even if Ji Fei wanted to take them back, he could not. Swoosh! As if affected by the impact of the mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword, the ancient seal also emitted a terrifying energy fluctuation. It shot into the sky and stopped in front of the mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword. The three treasures were facing each other. Supreme treasure. Ji Fei was extremely excited. He did not expect to find a supreme treasure in this world of death. This ancient Buddha was too abnormal. A supreme treasure had actually appeared in the hell path that he had refined. Could it be that an extreme powerhouse had fallen in the hell path? What kind of concept was an extreme powerhouse? It was the most powerful existence in the world. The end of the Tao was the extreme Tao. Legend had it that such people had reached the supreme realm of invincibility. Even if the world was destroyed, it would be difficult for them to fall. However, these extreme powerhouses had completely disappeared from this world. Even the immortals had not been seen for thousands of years. All the great powers and immortals had become legends. The extreme powerhouses had disappeared, but their weapons had been passed down. The great figures in the cultivation world believed that only the weapons and treasures refined by the extreme powerhouses could give birth to a soul. A weapon with a soul must be the sacred weapon of the extreme powerhouses. However, even in the world of cultivation, no one had actually seen an extreme path treasure. In fact, in the world of cultivation, weapons and magic treasures with souls were also a legend. Of course, there were also people who believed that the few super forces in the cultivation world controlled supreme treasures. It was precisely because of the existence of supreme treasures that these forces were able to prosper for a long time. However, no one knew what the true trump cards of these forces were. Boom! Suddenly, a loud noise pulled Ji Fei's thoughts back to reality. He focused his eyes and saw that the three treasures in the sky had all changed to the size of a mountain. The three treasures vibrated at the same time. The entire inner world seemed to have been hit by a terrifying storm. The void was shaking, the earth was cracking, and endless elements of fire, water, wind surged in the chaotic zone. Swoosh! The purple gold divine sword moved first. The sword light soared thousands of jong like a destructive divine light. It directly slashed at the ancient seal. Wherever the sword light passed, the void shattered and turned into chaos. Bang! The ancient seal directly soared into the sky and clashed with the purple gold sword light. There was no blinding divine light, no terrifying waves of divine power. However, the void collapsed. The ancient seal directly shattered a part of the void. Boom! The sword light formed by the purple gold divine sword instantly collided with the ancient seal that rushed over like a huge mountain. The two treasures collided head-on, and terrifying energy fluctuations erupted. Endless sword chi tore through the void and pierced in all directions. Pitch-black spatial holes appeared in this world, and Jiyu Fei's inner world was full of holes. It was hard to describe this scene as an earth-shattering scene. At the center of the collision between the two treasures, the void within a radius of several miles instantly collapsed, forming an extremely terrifying and chaotic destructive storm. The purple gold divine sword and the ancient seal flew back at the same time. The two treasures clashed for the first time, and it seemed that there was no clear winner. The terrifying energy was raging, and the world was collapsing. Jiyu Fei only felt as if his body had been pierced. Blood seeped out from all the pores on his body, and cracks appeared on his colorful bones that were harder than refined iron. Jiyu Fei's physical body was closely related to his inner world. If his inner world completely collapsed, his martial body would most likely be half-crippled. Jiyu Fei spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, and his body swayed. His face turned deathly pale, and he finally knelt on one knee. The destruction of his inner world also caused Jiyu Fei's physical body to suffer a terrifying impact. "Boss, save me," He Tian cried out. He was pressed to the ground by the mighty aftershock from the sky, and no matter how he struggled, he could not stand up. It was as if there were hundreds of thousands of mountains pressing down on He Tian's body, causing his bones to make crackling sounds as if they were about to break apart. The fire of the soul in his skull also dimmed. This time, the ruffian skeleton Erebus was truly flustered. Even his soul flame was descending down from the sky. A great power had sealed it. Even if he wanted to break out of his skull, his soul flame would not be able to escape. Moreover, where could it escape to in Jiyu Fei's inner world? How can I be so unlucky? He Tian wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Of course, he couldn't cry even if he wanted to, because he was a skeleton, an undead creature. At this time, Jiyu Fei was also not feeling well. The power emitted by the three treasures was too strong. Fortunately, he was in his inner world, and Jiyu Fei's inner world had isolated most of the power from the outside world. Even so, his body would occasionally emit crackling sounds, and all the bones in his body would be crushed to pieces. Bang! The mountain and river cauldron shook, and primal chaos energy surged out from the cauldron. The mountain and river cauldron displayed its supreme power of stabilizing the world, stabilizing this small world that was on the verge of collapse. The shattered void was rapidly mending itself. Very soon, Jiyu Fei's inner world stabilized once again. The cracks formed by the power of the two treasures and the holes created by the unparalleled sword chi were rapidly disappearing. The mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold divine sword were both spiritual treasures. They had recognized Jiyu Fei as their master. When Jiyu Fei was attacked, they automatically resisted and dissolved the attack for Jiyu Fei. This won't do. If I let these three treasures fight in my inner world, I'm afraid my inner world will most likely be destroyed. Jiyu Fei was horrified. It was just a frontal attack, but the terrifying power emitted by the two treasures almost caused his inner world to collapse. If they attacked a few more times, Jiyu Fei's inner world would definitely not be able to withstand it. Rumble, the ancient seal emitted a dazzling divine light, smashed the void, and moved towards the mountain and river cauldron. The inner world that was stabilized by the mountain and river cauldron shook violently again. This ancient seal did not care about Jiu Fei's life. Damn it. If you want to fight, then fight outside. Although Jiu Fei was the master of this world, the power of the supreme treasures was too strong and terrifying. They were not suppressed by this small world at all. Seeing that the ancient seal was about to hit the mountain and river cauldron, Jiu Fei gritted his teeth and opened his inner world with all his strength. The three treasures were instantly moved out of his inner world.